Chapter 1270, A Ball of Light. Gu Honglang held Leng Hu with one hand, and it pained him to see her like this. After examining Leng Hu's arms, he was infuriated. A storm seemed to brew in his eyes. "Sister Hu, the bones in your arms are broken, and I'm afraid it'll hurt. But don't worry. I'll make her pay for this." Gu Honglang gave Leng Hu to Tao Hu before he walked up to Duan Chaoga. He was very tall, at least 15 centimeters taller than Chaoga. There was a murderous look in his eyes as he looked down at Chaoga, and his voice was as cold as ice. "Are you going to do it yourself, or do I have to do it for you?" His tone was relentless. Gu Honglang wanted to kill Duan Chaoga. Everyone's stomachs lurched when they heard this. Shit! This was only supposed to be a squabble between two students, not a duel. But now, Gu Honglang wanted to kill Duan Chaoga? That wasn't right at all. Seeing that things were going south, Jin Yuntao and his friends ran off to get help. Some went to look for Feng Wu, and some went to the Crown Prince's residence. Gu Honglang saw them leave, but he didn't care. He stared at Duan Chaoga with such a fierce look in his eyes. Those terrifying eyes reminded the others of an eagle. Many Year 1 students were frightened by the crazy look in Gu Honglang's eyes and stepped back involuntarily. That was so terrifying. However, Duan Chaoga was dauntless. She smirked. "Bring it on. I'm not afraid of you." "Young lady, you're very brave." Gu Honglang gave her an eerie smile and moved suddenly. Before Chaoga could react, he struck out, a blazing ball of light forming between his palms. The great light. Everyone looked astonished, and they all stepped back. Chaoga's stomach lurched as well. Before she could react, that giant ball of light was falling down on her. Shit! Chaoga felt a chill run down her spine. Instinctively, she jumped forward. Thump! The ball smashed into the ground, leaving a deep hollow. Luckily, Chaoga had gotten away in time, or she would have been sucked into that ball of light. The great light doesn't try to crush a person, but to suck them into it. Narrowing his eyes, Rong Shixin explained to the others, anyone touched by that ball of light will be sucked into it, and when that happens, they'll be rendered defenseless. That's so frightening. Luckily, Duan Chaoga ran away in time. Otherwise, she would have been sucked into it. Look, that ball is rolling after Duan Chaoga. Everybody out of the way. Soon, they fell back another 50 meters or so. The scowling Gu Honglang and fleeing Duan Chaoga were the only people left in the clearing. Oh God, look, that ball. It's grown bigger. Yes, that ball had only been as tall as a person at first, but it was getting bigger and bigger. By now, it was already 2 stories high. The bigger it became, the easier it would be for it to catch Chaoga. Chaoga didn't know what to do. She could sense how terrifying this ball was and had been running as fast as she could, but she simply couldn't get away from it. Chapter 1271, Untitled. Thump. All of a sudden, Chaoga slipped and fell. By then, the ball of light was only centimeters away from her. The ball rolled over her without hesitation. Chaoga was nowhere to be seen in its wake. OMG! That ball really sucked Duan Chaoga inside. Duan Chaoga is right inside. The ball was transparent, so they could see Chaoga right away. A hurricane suddenly started inside the ball, and it was brutal. Poor Duan Chaoga. The wind threw her around inside the ball, smashing her against its surface. Thud, thud, thud. Her forehead was bleeding, and she had bruises all over her body. In this confined space controlled by Gu Honglang, Chaoga was completely defenseless. The other students were terrified by this and looked at Gu Honglang in awe. That was the difference between a Year 2 and a Year 1 student. The latter would never stand a chance. Thud, thud, thud. Chaoga was still being thrown around, and Gu Honglang's grin became wider. Rong Shixin frowned. He knew that if no one intervened, Duan Chaoga would be tortured to death in less than a minute. As the wind threw her around, her clothes were ripped and her skin began to show. Rong Shixin knitted his eyebrows. As president of the Year 1 students, he couldn't let something like this happen under his watch. Moreover, he recalled what Feng Wu was like. He stepped out and narrowed his eyes as he spoke to Gu Honglang. That's enough. Stop it. All eyes were on Rong Shixin. Seeing Duan Chaoga getting brutally abused, all the Year 1 students felt sympathy for her, because it could be any one of them. Now that Rong Shixin had stepped out, they all clenched their fists and began to see a little hope. Gu Honglang didn't see that coming. Glancing at Rong Shixin, he said, "Who are you to talk to me like that?" Frowning, Rong Shixin said calmly, "You can ask Duan Chaoga to apologize or beat her up, but don't you think it's highly inappropriate to treat a girl like this? So, do you want to save her?" Gu Honglang smirked. The next second, he grabbed Rong Shixin and said, "You can go inside with her." Rong Shixin had thought that he was at least as good as Gu Honglang, but he was wrong. Gu Honglang was so fast that he was in front of Rong Shixin before he knew it. Thump! Gu Honglang sealed off Rong Shixin's energy channels as soon as he caught him. After that, he tossed Rong Shixin into the ball. SSSS. Everyone drew in their breaths. How terrifying. Rong Shixin used to be the top student on the billboard. If Feng Wu hadn't risen to the top, he probably would have stayed there for a very long time. However, Rong Shixin couldn't even withstand a single strike from Gu Honglang, and had been tossed into the ball straight away. Gu Honglang was so frightening. If even Rong Shixin couldn't put up a fight, then who could? A hush fell over the crowd, and it was so quiet that one could hear the sound of falling leaves. Since you care about her so much, you can die with her. Gu Honglang grinned maliciously. Chapter 1272, Feng Wu's Power, 1. Since Chaoga had broken Leng Hu's arms, Gu Honglang decided that he wasn't satisfied with just killing Duan Chaoga. You're all useless. Gu Honglang glanced at the Year 1 students, not trying to hide the contempt in his eyes. Frustrated by his tone, the Year 1 students clenched their fists and were filled with anger. However, even Rong Shixin didn't stand a chance in front of Gu Honglang, so no one dared to speak up. Beef. Gu Honglang snorted. Good-for-nothings like you have no right to be angry. He jabbed the forehead of a Year 1 student in front of him with his finger, and his tone was extremely arrogant. You're all idiots. He kicked a student away. Imperial College was a rigidly stratified society. All Year 2 students were senior to Year 1 students, and it was common for the former to bully the latter. That was so frustrating. The Year 1 students clenched their fists with bloodshot eyes, but no one dared to do anything. The feeling was so awful. Let's go. Seeing that the fight was over and that he had saved face after helping his sister, Tao who was ready to leave with his little gang. However, just then whoosh a streak of light flashed past. The giant sturdy ball of light was pierced by a sharp dagger. The fat ball deflated as everyone watched. Duan Chaoga and Rong Shixin rolled out of the ball. Rong Shixin didn't look too bad. He had been sucked in just then and only had a few bruises on him. Duan Chaoga, however, wasn't as lucky. Gu Honglang had tortured her on purpose. As a result, she was covered in cuts and bruises. Feng Wu was filled with rage when she saw the unconscious Duan Chaoga. Feng Wu. Feng Wu's here. Feng Wu's arrived. This is going to be good. Many people were reminded of Feng Wu's duel with Xin Yuan the other day. Feng Wu had replaced Rong Shixin and become the top student on the billboard. After carefully examining Chaoga, Feng Wu saw that the wounds were only superficial. They might seem severe, but her internal organs weren't injured. Even so, Feng Wu was still furious. However, the angrier she was, the calmer she appeared. She took out some supreme-level potion and fed it to Chaoga. She then handed Chaoga over to another student. Please look after her for me, Feng Wu told Gong Sun Qing. Gong Sun Qing nodded solemnly and supported Chaoga with both hands. I will. The place had become very quiet, as though a storm was coming. Gu Honglang stared at Feng Wu with sharp eyes. That ignorant girl sabotaged his great light. How interesting. Gu Honglang stood where he was while Feng Wu walked toward him, moving as nimbly as a cat. She stopped in front of him. Their eyes met. Gu Honglang couldn't hide the surprise in his eyes when he saw her face. What a pretty girl. Who are you? Gu Honglang stared at Feng Wu with narrowed eyes. Year 1 and Year 2 had different living quarters and hardly ever talked to each other. To be more precise, Year 2 students didn't care what happened in Year 1 at all. Chapter 1273, Feng Wu's Power, 2. Feng Wu answered Gu Honglang in an indifferent voice. I'm Feng Wu. Feng Wu? Never heard that name. Gu Honglang's face remained expressionless. Feng Wu smirked. You'll soon remember it. Feng Wu struck out before Gu Honglang could react. Boom! Feng Wu punched Gu Honglang in the face. Thump! Caught off guard, Gu Honglang was hit in the nose. Blood gushed out and he stumbled back. Holy shit! Everyone was astonished. Feng Wu had really hit Gu Honglang. Gu Honglang himself was more shocked than anyone else. He stared at Feng Wu in disbelief, and his bloodshot eyes popped. This ignorant girl had just hit him. Damn you! Gu Honglang looked furious. The next second he tried to grab Feng Wu with both hands, moving as fast as a cheetah. He didn't care how good-looking the girl was anymore. He had to save his dignity first. But to Gu Honglang's surprise, Feng Wu was even faster. She was already charging at him before he could get to her, and her spiritual essence devoured him like a tidal wave. Thump! Feng Wu's fist landed on his face again. If Gu Honglang was caught off guard the first time, what about now? Thump, thump, thump. Feng Wu's fists landed repeatedly on his face like a thunderstorm. 10, 20, 30 times? She didn't give Gu Honglang any chance to fight back, and he was completely dumbfounded. In her infuriated state, Feng Wu was exerting all her strength. With each punch, she would do some more damage to Gu Honglang's body with her spiritual essence. Stop! Tao Hu couldn't bring himself to continue watching any longer. He thought Gu Honglang had been too careless at first and would soon fight back and defeat Feng Wu. However, to his surprise, Gu Honglang never stood a chance and was getting beaten to death. Hearing Tao Hu's bellow, Feng Wu kicked Gu Honglang. Thump! The strength she exerted reminded one of an explosion. Tao Hu couldn't believe that Feng Wu could kick like that with her slim leg. Boom! Gu Honglang, who had tortured Rong Shixin and Duan Chaoge relentlessly, had become a defenseless chicken in front of Feng Wu. The impact sent him flying backward. Behind him was a giant rock with sharp edges. If Gu Honglang smashed into it at this speed, he could be killed. Thrusting his right foot against the ground, Tao Hu leapt up and caught Gu Honglang at the last moment. Even so, Gu Honglang was still barely breathing. After handing Gu Honglang to Leng Hu and the other members of his gang, Tao Hu turned around and faced Feng Wu with a fierce look in his eyes. He had to admit that this girl was quite a capable cultivator. So, you're Feng Wu? Because of his sister Tao Yu, Tao Hu had heard of Feng Wu before. However, Tao Yu had only given him the twisted version. Narrowing her eyes, Feng Wu was instinctively on guard when she met Tao Hu's gaze. Tao Hu was also a decent cultivator among the Year 2 students. Because of that, he had always been an intimidating figure to the other students. That's right. I'm Feng Wu. Feng Wu met Tao Hu's gaze in a manner that was neither humble nor arrogant. She looked perfectly calm. Chapter 1274, Feng Wu's Power, 3. No wonder His Royal Highness annulled your marriage contract. The Crown Prince knows better than any of us what you're like. All of Tao Hu's people snickered when they heard that. However, Feng Wu remained unperturbed, as though he wasn't talking about her. Is it a duel then? Feng Wu asked calmly as she crossed her arms. A duel? Tao Hu laughed. To him, a duel was only for two people with similar cultivation levels, and this ignorant girl wasn't qualified to fight him. I don't do duels. Tao Hu stared at Feng Wu. I only have battles. Feng Wu smirked. So, you want to fight me? Tao Hu nodded solemnly. You're very good for a girl your age. I saw what you did to Gu Honglang, but you're not strong enough to fight me yet. Feng Wu smiled. Is that so? With a wave of his hand, Tao Hu took off his fur cape. He then slowly walked up to Feng Wu and stopped in front of her. Although it feels wrong to kick you around, I still won't cut you loose today. Tao Hu stared at Feng Wu and said, I'll let you make 3 moves first. I won't fight back. You can start now. Feng Wu tried to come up with a quick plan. Tao Hu was indeed a very capable cultivator and probably better than she was. It would be very difficult for her to defeat him. However, he was careless enough to let her make 3 moves first. Feng Wu smiled a little. Sure, I'll defeat you in just 3 moves. Because those moves were all she knew. She had only learned the first 3 stances of Fallen Star swordplay. As for the rest of the stances, she would have to wait until her beautiful master woke up again. You're going to defeat me in 3 moves? That's just preposterous. Tao Hu snorted. His friends laughed with him. They all thought that Feng Wu was bragging. Feng Wu sighed inwardly when she recalled her 4th trial, and she asked in a serious tone, what if I can do it? Tao Hu smirked. If you succeed, I'll do whatever you want. That was all she needed to hear. Smiling a little, Feng Wu said, Here we go, then. Immediately after that, Flaming Sword appeared in Feng Wu's slender hand. Unfortunately, Fallen Star Sword hadn't been made yet, and Flaming Sword was all she could use for now. Feng Wu sighed in resignation. Her strikes would be at least 50% more powerful if she had Fallen Star Sword. She made a mental note that she should have it made ASAP. But her top priority now was to defeat Tao Hu. He was a very formidable enemy. And he was much stronger than Xin Yuanyi. In Feng Wu's hand, the flaming sword glowed red and reminded one of a raging fire. An intimidating power surged out of Feng Wu's body and flowed into the sword. It was power strong enough to shake heaven and earth. The first stance of Fallen Star swordplay, Sword of the Other World. Dark clouds suddenly gathered above their heads and soon covered the sky. Then there was a gust of wind. Countless swords flew at Tao Hu. They reminded the others of 1,000 shooting arrows. Tao Hu only stood there and was perfectly composed. He hadn't thought much of Feng Wu until she activated Fallen Star swordplay. She suddenly became much more intimidating and reminded him of an ice queen. Her slim body seemed to contain an energy that was powerful enough to shake the entire world. So, the Year 1 students this year are more interesting than I thought. Tao Hu found Feng Wu a little more worthy of his attention, but still not important enough. Chapter 1275, Feng Wu's Power, 4. Thump. With Flaming Sword in her hand, Feng Wu guided the countless swords in Tao Hu's direction. Their movements seemed to shake heaven and earth. The crowd all held their breaths for Feng Wu. Most of the audience were Year 1 students, and they were still feeling frustrated at being humiliated by these Year 2 students. They were hoping that Feng Wu could avenge them. Thump. Feng Wu was using the first stance of Fallen Star swordplay, Sword of the Other World. And Tao Hu was hit. Wow! The others cried out in surprise. Feng Wu hit him. So, Feng Wu still stands a chance, doesn't she? Maybe she can win. They were all feeling excited when Tao Hu guffawed. When they turned to look at Tao Hu, they realized that although he had taken the hit, the sword didn't penetrate his defensive shield. That was to say, Tao Hu hadn't suffered any injury. Ha ha. Ha ha. Ha ha. All of Tao Hu's friends laughed. That was the real difference between Year 1 and Year 2 students. Tao Yu had been a little worried at first, but she wasn't anymore when she saw this. Tao Hu gave Feng Wu a taunting look. It's not too late to kneel and admit your defeat now. I can still spare your life. Immediately, all eyes were on Feng Wu. She couldn't even break his defense, which was proof enough of the difference between their capabilities. There was no point in continuing the fight. All the Year 1 students felt sorry for her. The difference was simply so huge that they were filled with despair. Xiao Wu. Even the dauntless Chaoga, who had just woken up, tugged at Feng Wu's sleeve and gave her a pleading look. Please stop fighting. You won't win, and you'll only be humiliated. No one had any hope for Feng Wu, and everyone thought that she was going to lose. However, Feng Wu smirked. The second stance of Fallen Star Swordplay, Dancing Dragon in the Moonlight. A fire dragon shot out a flaming sword and flew at Tao Hu. Because her first stance wasn't able to break Tao Hu's defense, he didn't think much of her second stance either. How are you going to hurt me when you can't even break my defense? Tao Hu stood there without moving an inch, and had even crossed his hands behind his back. It was obvious that he wasn't going to do anything. Meanwhile, the Year 1 students all looked forward to Feng Wu's second move. If she could break his defense this time, she might have a chance. But, thump! The fire dragon charged out, moving as swiftly as a ghost, and the energy it gave off reminded one of a volcano. The impact seemed to twist the air. Thump! The dragon finally reached Tao Hu and struck him in the chest. Tao Hu stood there with his hands crossed behind his back as he watched Feng Wu with a taunting look in his eyes. He didn't need to put up a fight, because the fire dragon would never be able to break his defense. Thump! The fire dragon flew across the yard like a gust of wind and smashed into his chest. Boom! Tao Hu seemed to be covered by an invisible defensive shield, and when the fire dragon crashed into it, small cracks which looked like a spider web appeared on the shield. However, Chapter 1276, Feng Wu's Power, 5. The defensive shield remained intact until the fire dragon disappeared. Haha, Tao Hu guffawed. His friends laughed until they were in tears. How can she possibly think that she can defeat our boss? She's so ridiculous. She can't even break his defense, but she's still bragging about winning. Where did she get all that confidence? They were only attacking Feng Wu at first, but soon they started criticizing all the Year 1 students. Look at their billboard. The top student is called Feng Wu. So, she's the strongest student in Year 1. Are they so weak nowadays? Even their top student is so weak. Year 1 students are no longer what they used to be. Do you remember what we were like? Feng Wu and the other Year 1 students heard all their comments. Many students felt so humiliated it was like they had been slapped in the face. They all stared at Tao Hu with bloodshot eyes. Tao Hu and his friends only smirked arrogantly and dared them to challenge the Year 2 students. Feng Wu remained unperturbed in the face of their taunts. The third stance of Fallen Star Swordplay, Fatal Thunder. Thunder rumbled and lightning flashed in the sky as soon as she said those words. However, the Year 2 students only guffawed. What? She still hasn't given up? She'll keep going if she can't break his defense. What's her problem? The Year 1 students were also giving Feng Wu strange looks. They felt so humiliated by the taunting words. Feng Wu, get down from there already. You can't break his defense, so what good can you do? You're only humiliating yourself. Get down and admit your defeat. That was so humiliating. The Year 1 students were divided into two groups. The reasonable ones knew that the Year 2 students were the culprits. But the unreasonable ones were blaming Feng Wu for their humiliation. But no matter what other people said, Feng Wu remained calm and was perfectly composed. Did Tao Hu think that she couldn't break his defense? Feng Wu smirked inwardly. In fact, only she knew that she hadn't used her full power in the first 2 strikes. She had been pretending to be weaker than she really was. Tao Hu was indeed a capable cultivator, and Feng Wu wasn't sure that she could win if she fought him fair and square. So that she had shown weakness on purpose and made him think that she was too weak to break through his defense. That way, he would underestimate her and let his guard down. And now, Feng Wu knew that it was time. She smiled. No one saw the lightning flickering in her palm. Go, Fatal Thunder! Feng Wu shouted, and intimidating energy rushed toward Tao Hu. Tao Hu smirked. So did his friends. They laughed at the arrogant little girl, and decided to defeat her once and for all once she had completed her 3 moves. Chapter 1277, Feng Wu's Power, 6. Rumble. The energy was more powerful than the 2 previous strikes put together. and all of it smashed against Tao Hu. Tao Hu felt a burning sensation run through him, but, is that all you can do? Ha ha. Tao Hu guffawed and his laughter resounded in the air. Behind him, the other members of Tiger Head laughed as well. The Year 1 students had been a little hopeful before, but now, they were filled with despair. They lost all hope. There was nothing left to say. However, right at that moment, all of a sudden, there was a shrill sound amidst the rumbling thunder. Bang! It was so loud that it seemed to shake the sky. Everyone jumped, and they all looked in the direction of the sound. It came from where Tao Hu had been standing. He had been laughing only a second ago, but now, he stood there with blood running out of all his orifices. He was completely dazed, as though he had just seen the most terrifying thing in his life. However, the only person in front of him was Feng Wu, the pretty girl. But they could see fear in Tao Hu's eyes. Fear. Why would Feng Wu, the Year 1 student who couldn't break through his defense, scare him so much? Just then, crackle, 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 that there was a strange sound. Where was it coming from? Before they knew it, everyone was looking for the source of that sound. Soon, someone cried out, "Look at Tao Hu." Everyone turned to look at Tao Hu, and saw that he was surrounded by flashes of lightning. Was there a thunderstorm raging inside him? But Feng Wu hadn't been able to break through his defense, had she? So how did the lightning get into his system? Everyone was astonished. And the Year 1 students weren't alone. The members of Tiger Head had been gloating before, but they couldn't help but panic a little now. Because Tao Hu just stood there without moving. The crackling sound kept coming out of him, as well as the smell of something burning. It was as though Tao Hu was being cooked from inside out by lightning. It was so scary. Tao Yu ran over to him first. She grabbed him and asked anxiously, "Brother, what's W?" But before she could finish her question, her hand was stuck to Tao Hu, and she could feel the terrifying electric current surging toward her. The next second, it was inside her. That hurt. Instantly, Tao Yu felt her head go blank, and she drew in a pained breath. She wanted to put her hand down, but realized that she no longer had control over her body. More lightning energy kept pouring into her from Tao Hu's body. "Help!" Tao Yu burst into tears. Lung Hu ran up to her and tried to separate them, but as soon as she touched Tao Yu, she was stuck as well. The electric current then ran from Tao Yu to Lung Hu. Shit! However, when Lung Hu realized that something was wrong, she could no longer speak. Gu Honglang had always been fond of Lung Hu, so when he saw her go stiff, he tried to save her. But he only got himself stuck to the others. The other two members of Tiger Head were so scared and unable to look away. Chapter 1278, The Smart Plan. They all stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. "What did you do? Let them go now." Only then did the Year 1 students realize what had happened. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Oh God! Am I dreaming? Feng Wu did that to Tao Hu. I thought she couldn't break his defense at first. But Tao Hu is under her control now, isn't he? I think she did more than that. Just look at all those people there. How did she do it? How? Immediately, everyone was talking excitedly. They had been so miserable a moment ago, but that feeling had just been replaced with excitement. Feng Wu had won. And she represented all the Year 1 students. No words could begin to describe that feeling. However, Feng Wu remained as composed as ever. She slowly walked up to Tao Hu and smiled at him. Meanwhile, Tao Hu was so frustrated that he almost had a nervous breakdown. If he could, he would love to punch Feng Wu in the face. He was supposed to be so much more powerful than this girl. But he had underestimated her. He really had. Feng Wu had made her first two strikes very flashy but with limited impact, which gave Tao Hu the impression that she wasn't strong enough to hurt him. Then, in her third strike, she exerted all her strength. That was her true capability. He had let his guard down and walked into her trap. To make it worse, the lightning energy was running through his veins and burning him from within. It was such a strange energy. Tao Hu's body was being destroyed under his very nose. He knew very well that if Feng Wu didn't stop it, he and all his friends would soon all be turned into useless cripples. Feng Wu crossed her arms and asked him with a smile, "Are you willing to admit your defeat now?" At that moment, what choice did Tao Hu have? He glared at Feng Wu with cold eyes that were filled with hatred. Feng Wu only smiled and didn't seem to sense his hatred at all. This damn girl. Feng Wu and Tao Hu didn't exchange a word, but they communicated with their eyes. In the end, Tao Hu gritted his teeth and said, "You win." "Brother, you." Tao Yu was so angry that her eyes turned red. Gu Honglang and the others were equally furious. But what other choice did he have? The lightning was still crackling inside him. If this continued, he would end up losing all his cultivation. "I admit my defeat. You win. I misjudged you and underestimated you. I lost." Tao Hu glared at Feng Wu. Even if there was less hatred in his eyes, it was still there. Feng Wu smiled a little. She didn't care how much he hated her. So many people already hated her. Tao Hu would just be one more. Feng Wu nodded. "You've admitted your defeat? Good." Then, with a wave of her hand, Feng Wu drew back something that resembled a web made from lightning. Instantly, a weight seemed to be lifted off Tao Hu's shoulders. His knees buckled and he almost collapsed. Chapter 1279. I hope you won't regret it later. "Brother." The other two members of Tiger Head reacted quickly and caught Tao Hu in time. Tao Hu was covered in his own sweat, as though he had just climbed out of an icy pond. He glared at Feng Wu with eyes filled with hatred. "You brat. I won't forget this." Tao Hu turned to leave after saying those words. "However, I thought we had a deal, but you're leaving just like that. Senior Tao Hu, are you someone who goes back on your word?" Feng Wu chuckled behind him. Tao Hu twitched and had to fight back his impulse to kill Feng Wu right there and then. It was already a great humiliation for him to lose to a year one, so what more did this girl want? Tao Hu was shaking with anger as he clenched his fists. "Feng Wu, you're pushing it." Once she regained her freedom, Tao Yu glared at Feng Wu. "You do realize that you'll be in year 2 one day, don't you?" By that, she meant that the others could get their revenge when Feng Wu was in year 2. However, Feng Wu only smiled. "That's right. I'll become a year 2 student, but not that far off in the future." Not that far off in the future. Many people began to give Feng Wu strange looks. After a pause, Feng Wu smiled. "So, my hope of skipping a grade will depend on you lots." Skip a grade. Everyone from both year 1 and year 2 were astonished at that statement. Skip a grade. Feng Wu was going to year 2 right now. The year 1 student talked among themselves. How long has it been since school started? Why is Feng Wu already planning to skip grades now? But she only just got here. But honestly, if she's good enough to defeat Gu Honglang and Tao Hu, she's good enough to be a year 2 student. She's not just good enough to be in year 2. If I remember correctly, Tao Hu is ranked 100th in year 2 now. Instantly, everyone fell silent. They remembered how they used to laugh at Feng Wu when her name wasn't on the billboard, saying that she had only gotten in because she cheated or because of her connections. But as it turned out, she was already strong enough to go to year 2. Moreover, she would be a capable cultivator there as well. The members of Tiger Head had their own ideas. Tao Hu smirked. He decided that he would let Feng Wu go to year 2. When that happened, he would show her a good time. "Do you want to skip grades?" There was no warmth in Tao Hu's eyes. Feng Wu smiled. "That's right. Senior Tao, won't you welcome me there?" "Of course I will." Tao Hu smirked. "I hope you won't regret your decision." The year 2 students were in a separate quarter known as Initial. There were so many capable cultivators there that Feng Wu wouldn't be able to stand out as much. Feng Wu smiled. "So, Senior Tao, are you going to be my guarantor, then?" Feng Wu had filled in her application, but apart from Chief Chiao's signature, she would also need 5 year 2 students as her guarantors. Tao Hu grinned maliciously. "I see. You've only just entered Imperial College and don't know many Year 2 students. If I don't sign it, there's no way for you to skip grades. Feng Wu only smiled. Of course she had other ways, it was just that. Chapter 1280, She won. If they wouldn't help, she could still make it happen, it would just take a little more effort. Tao Hu smirked. What if we say no? Feng Wu smiled. I see that you've forgotten what you said before the battle. Tao Hu's head went blank. Only then did he recall the deal he made with Feng Wu before they started fighting. He had said in passing that if he lost, he would do as she wanted. Wu. Tao Hu glared at Feng Wu and felt utterly frustrated. He realized that she had to have come up with this plan before the battle even started. She had been counting on this deal and had shown weakness on purpose. The whole thing had been a trap and he had been so pleased with himself the entire time. He had laughed wholeheartedly. The thought made Tao Hu flush. That abominable girl. In the end, Tao Hu and his friends had no choice but to sign Feng Wu's application form. 5 names were needed, and Tiger Head just happened to have 5 members. It was as though they had come here just for Feng Wu. What a coincidence. Here's one more. Feng Wu took out Chaoga's application form. Feng Wu, you're pushing the limit. Tao Hu was about to leave when he was handed the other form. Feng Wu smiled. Well, since all of you are going to sign your names, anyway, one more form won't make any difference. Now just sign it. Poor Linghu. Chaoga had crushed her arms earlier, but she still had to sign her name for Chaoga despite the pain. One couldn't begin to describe how frustrated she felt. But Feng Wu won, and their boss admitted his defeat, so what other choice did they have? Tao Hu stormed off with his friends after they signed their names. Only then did the Year 1 students realize what had happened. Wow. Feng Wu won. God. She really did. This is the first time a Year 1 student has ever defeated a Year 2 student, isn't it? I'm so proud of Feng Wu. Tao Hu and his people were so arrogant at first, but Feng Wu defeated them all. She's amazing. She's so amazing. Some of the Year 1 students hadn't been convinced by Feng Wu's capability before, but they changed their opinion now. Feng Wu slowly walked up to Tao Yu, crouched down and stared at her. Tao Yu had set herself against Feng Wu because of her older brother in Year 2. However, even he had been defeated now, so she had no choice but to surrender. Tao Yu seemed utterly flustered when their eyes met again, and before Feng Wu said anything, Tao Yu apologized first. After that, Guan Jing apologized as well. Feng Wu then casually turned to Feng Sang. Feng Sang lowered her head and didn't dare look at Feng Wu. The moment Feng Wu defeated Tao Hu, no one would ever doubt that she was the top student in Year 1. Even by Year 2 standards, she was no longer a nobody. No one had any reason to challenge her anymore. Feng Wu asked Chaoga, how are you holding up? Chaoga had suffered a lot of external injuries, but the supreme-level medicine Feng Wu had given her was very effective, and she was mostly recovered by now. But Feng Wu still shook her head and asked Gong Sun Qing to take Chaoga away to get some rest. When she walked past Rong Shixin, Feng Wu said, I owe you one. Because Rong Shixin had stood up for Chaoga and tried to save her at the critical moment. Chapter 1281. Initial. Feng Wu didn't care why he had tried to help or whether or not he succeeded, she felt grateful all the same. Feng Wu said she owed him one. Rong Shixin was dazed and felt conflicted. It hadn't been very long ago that he considered Feng Wu just another junior classmate with a promising future, but before he knew it, Feng Wu had killed Xinyuan Yi and become the top student in Year 1. And now, she had defeated Tao Hu, proving herself to be as capable as a Year 2 student. Even he, who had once been first in Year 1, had to look up to her now. Sure. Rong Shixin gave her a wry smile. He glanced at Si Yuan as he smiled. Compared with Si Yuan, Rong Shixin thought that he had done a better job of accepting reality. What he didn't foresee was how this favor from Feng Wu would change his life. Feng Wu left after saying those words. Xiao Wu, where are you going? Chaoga asked involuntarily. Feng Wu waved the application forms in her hand and smiled. The year 2 quarter, of course. She was already a few hundred meters away after those words. All the year 1 students were baffled. The next second they all looked at Chowga. Is Feng Wu really skipping grades to year 2? I thought we couldn't do that until the end of a term. Feng Wu just defended Tiger Head. If she really skips to year 2, I'm sure they'll give her such a hard time. Everyone was talking at the same time. Some were worried while others were curious. The members of Tiger Head stormed off toward Initial, the territory of the year 2 students. Brother, I can't stand this. Gu Honglang looked at Tao Hu. Tao Hu was furious as he clenched his fists and his eyes turned bloodshot red. I won't forgive her for what she did. Tao Hu gritted his teeth. Does she want to become a year 2 student? But I'll give her what she wants. Tiger Head had already been established for a few years and had gained a reputation. They were confident that once Feng Wu came to year 2, they could make her life a living hell. Who are you talking about? They heard a cheerful voice behind them when they were still discussing angrily among themselves. And they all paled as soon as they heard it. Feng Wu, are you following us? Lung Hu glared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu smiled and nodded, looking very sincere. That's right. Lung Hu said, we've done as you asked, what more do you want? Feng Wu only smiled. I won't be able to get into the year 2 area without a guide. Of course I have to follow you people. Are you going there now? That's right. I need Chief Chiao's seal on these forms. Feng Wu waved the application forms in her hand. There was a deadline to her trial. If she couldn't finish it within the next 10 days, her broken star piece would be gone forever. Lung Hu stared at Feng Wu. Her friends all looked alarmed as well. As far as they knew, Chief Chiao wasn't exactly a just leader. Apart from being biased toward those he considered his own, he also favored the more talented students. Feng Wu had shown so much potential at such a young age and was bound to have a promising future. She was just the type that Chief Chiao preferred. The members of Tiger Head couldn't stand the idea of Feng Wu joining year 2 and becoming a favorite of Chief Chiao. However, could they refuse to take her there? Of course they couldn't. Hence, after much hesitation when they reached the entrance of Initial, Tao Hu still led Feng Wu inside. Chapter 1282. Aren't you afraid that she'll get back at you? Year 1 students were the only ones that didn't have an area of their own. Starting from year 2, each year had their own territory. This area known as Initial was created when an unknown master cracked the space open. From above, one could see that the entire Initial consisted of a mountain. Grotesque stones protruded out of various peaks, and everywhere one turned, the ground was covered with thick growth, the foliage so thick it blocked out the sun. The teaching buildings and dormitories were scattered over the slopes. The members of Tiger Head didn't want to hang out with Feng Wu after they led her inside. So, they quickly walked away, leaving her behind all by herself. Feng Wu rubbed her nose and realized that she would need a guide here, since she didn't know her way around. She quickly glanced around the area. Soon she saw someone passing by. Since it was so hard to find a passerby, Feng Wu decided that she should grab this chance. So, she quickly ran after the person. It was a teenage boy in a green robe, which made him blend into the background. He was moving so fast that Feng Wu almost lost track of him. But Feng Wu was as persistent as ever. If she wanted to get something done, she would stick to it to the end. Whoosh! Activating Phoenix Dance, Feng Wu moved as fast as she could. The green-robed teenager was on his way back to his dormitory after practice when he noticed that he was being followed. He was amazed at the fact that someone would dare follow him in Initial. How interesting. He exerted more power and quickened his pace, thinking that he could easily throw the person off. However, the person behind him moved faster as well and was still following him. Frowning, the green-robed teenager looked over his shoulder, trying to see who was bold enough to offend him here. However, he stumbled as soon as he saw her face and almost tripped. What a beautiful girl! She had exquisite features and was stunningly beautiful, but she was only a teenager now. In a few years, no one would be able to resist her beauty. Ahem. Despite his astonishment, the green-robed teenager kept his expression very serious. You're not a Year 2 student. That was a statement. The green-robed teenager had been cultivating in seclusion and didn't know many fellow classmates. However, this girl was simply too beautiful. He knew he would have noticed her if she were a Year 2 student. Since Feng Wu was a stranger here, she didn't dare be reckless. With a sweet and innocent smile, she asked, "Brother, are you a Year 2 student?" Who could bring themselves to give such a lovely girl the cold shoulder? So, the teenager nodded and said, yes. While Feng Wu struck up a conversation with the teenager, the members of Tiger Head were discussing among themselves as well. Leng Hu snorted. We lured Feng Wu into Shu Yunruo's territory on purpose. He should be cultivating at this time of day. He's not going to be very forgiving. Gu Honglang glanced at Leng Hu and said, so that's why you insisted on taking this path. You're trying to set her up. Leng Hu snorted. Feng Wu knows next to nothing about initial, so of course I'll try to trick her. Gu Honglang asked, aren't you worried that she'll get back at you later? Leng Hu smirked. Get back at me? She'll have to survive in initial first. Plus, I have a feeling that Shu Yunruo won't forgive her that easily. Gu Honglang suggested, shall we go back to our place now, instead of waiting here? Chapter 1283. Why are Feng Wu and Shu Yunruo going up the mountain together? As for what they were waiting for, they wanted to see Feng Wu humiliated, of course. Sure. The other members of Tiger Head nodded happily as well. Shu Yunruo is one of the top 5 students in Year 2, and if Feng Wu offends him, Meanwhile, Feng Wu was chatting with Shu Yunruo. Who are you, and what are you doing here at Initial? Shu Yunruo stared at Feng Wu with his piercing eyes. Feng Wu told him the truth. I'm here to see Chief Chiao. Those people of Tiger Head led me in and left me here. I have no idea where to find Chief Chiao. She wasn't dumb and could see immediately that Shu Yunruo was too powerful a cultivator for her to mess with. She saw how dangerous it would be if she disturbed his cultivation practice. She had seen through Leng Hu's plan. So, she gave Tiger Head up without hesitation. Meanwhile, she was also trying to find out how powerful this teenager was among his fellow Year 2 students. Tiger Head. Shu Yunruo snorted. Do they think they're good enough to trick me? Interesting. Feng Wu said, brother, could you please take me to Chief Chiao? I really need to see him now. According to her estimation, Tao Hu was ranked around 100 in Year 2. Judging from this teenager's tone when he talked about Tiger Head, he should be a lot more capable than Tao Hu. Since Feng Wu was new here, she knew that anyone could try to trick her, so she decided that she should get all the help she could find. Shu Yunruo stared at Feng Wu with his emotionless eyes. This was the first time that a girl dared to make a request of him. That was bold. To Year 2 students, Shu Yunruo was an unapproachable creature. Brother, can you please help me? Feng Wu's beautiful eyes twinkled like stars, and anyone who looked into them would forget about everything else and say yes. Even someone as cold as Shu Yunruo couldn't help but frown. Feng Wu knew that she would have to face some difficulty before meeting Chief Chiao, and with this senior around, things would be much easier for her. Hence, she looked at him with the most pitiful expression on her face. Fine. Shu Yunruo rubbed his forehead. I'm on my way to Chief Chiao myself. I'll take you there. Wow. Really? Feng Wu's eyes lit up in pleasant surprise. Thank you, senior. May I have your name? I'll keep you in my prayers. No need. Shu Yunruo shook his head. He didn't know why he said yes either. Usually, he was all about keeping to himself and kept his distance from the other students. However, something about this girl made him want to get close to her. What a strange girl, thought Shu Yunruo. As expected, on their way up the mountain, Feng Wu saw that the roads were heavily guarded. Without Shu Yunruo, she would never be able to pass through, let alone meet Chief Chiao. Meanwhile, in the distance. What? Am I seeing things? Is Feng Wu going up the mountain with Shu Yunruo now? No, you're right. We can all see it. That's impossible. Shu Yunrua has always been so arrogant and unapproachable. Not only didn't he punish Feng Wu, he's also chatting happily with her as well. That's right. And he's taking Feng Wu to Chief Chiao with a smile on his face. Chapter 1284. Unexpected Treatment. All the members of Tiger Head were dumbfounded. They looked at one another in disbelief and were all astonished. Maybe they already know each other. Lung, who could only try to deceive herself with those words. Feng Wu had no idea that Tiger Head was still tracking her. Right now, she was trying to figure out what to say next. As a Year 1 student, it wasn't easy for her to get into Initial. It was common knowledge that the top student in Year 1 was qualified to enter Initial, but only once a year. Feng Wu was using her only opportunity this year, and if she couldn't get it done this time, she would have to wait another year if she wanted to come here again. Hence, she decided that she had to succeed this time. Soon, they arrived at the top of the mountain. The top of the mountain wasn't very spacious, but a quaint, 100-square-meter courtyard had been built there. The courtyard was surrounded by precipitous cliffs on all sides, and the thick mist in the valley made it impossible to see the bottom, which further reflected how unfathomably formidable this place was. With Shu Yunrua at her side, no one asked Feng Wu any questions, and they arrived at the top of the mountain without running into any obstructions. Outside the courtyard, young Master Yunrua. 2 guards stood outside the courtyard, and they greeted Shu Yunrua when they saw him. Shu Yunrua nodded at them. Is Chief Chiao inside? The 2 guards said yes. Because it was Shu Yunrua, no permission was needed, and the 2 of them walked in directly. Chief Chiao was sitting in the yard with a book in one hand and a cup of tea in the other. The teacup was transparent, and one could immediately see the green tea leaves within. Their color was vibrant, and they floated in the water, looking very pretty. Chief Chiao raised his eyebrows when he saw Shu Yunrua. Yunrua, to what do I owe this honor? Shu Yunrua had become one of the top 5 students a few years after he entered Year 2. Thus, Chief Chiao had been giving him a lot of attention. Shu Yunrua remained as indifferent as ever in front of Chief Chiao. He only gave the chief a nod before looking at Feng Wu. Now that he had brought her here, she was on her own. Shu Yunrua turned to leave. Chief Chiao was confused when he saw Feng Wu walk out from behind the boy. He found the girl familiar and wondered if they had met before. And you are? Chief Chiao put down his book and gave Feng Wu an unhurried glance. Hello, Chief Chiao, I'm here to apply to skip grades. Feng Wu handed Chief Chiao the application forms as she spoke. She secretly hoped that Chief Chiao hadn't heard anything bad about her from Chiao Yi yet. Otherwise, she might fail this mission. Skip grades? Chief Chiao glanced at the application forms to find the signatures of Chief Yu and 5 Year 2 students on them, and he raised his eyebrows. He then read the content in the Achievements Since Enrollment column, and his eyes widened. Since becoming a student here 3 months ago, she rose from a Level 4 Spiritual Grandmaster to Level 9, killed Xianyuan Yi, and took first place on the billboard. All her achievements were listed there, and any one of them would make a person's eyes widen. Chief Chiao had been indifferent to Feng Wu at first, but after reading her resume, he became intrigued. No one would be able to make up such stories here in Imperial College, because he had the authority to read all internal files. You've risen from Level 4 to Level 9 of the Spiritual Grandmaster stage in as short a time as 3 months. Is that true? Shu Yunrua was about to leave, but he paused when he heard that and looked back at Feng Wu. Chapter 1285. Too late. Despite her harmless appearance, the girl could be so violent deep down. Good. Chief Chiao nodded as he read on. He then looked up and beckoned Feng Wu over. Kiddo, why are you still standing there? Come here and sit with me. His attitude had changed so drastically. Feng Wu let out a breath of relief, thinking that it was going to be her lucky day today. Chief Chiao, my fate is in your hands now, said Feng Wu with a smile. Chief Chiao said grumpily, my year has no reason to turn away a student as excellent as you. Dong, bring me my seal. Dong was a Year 2 student and was currently working as Chief Chiao's personal assistant. She soon came back with the chief's seal and handed it to Chief Chiao with a smile. Chief Chiao said amicably, "Feng Wu, be a good student here. Bring Initial honor now, and Initial will be proud of you in the future." "Thank you, Chief Chiao." Feng Wu stared at the seal in his hands. She wished the man would stop babbling and put the seal on the form already. Still holding the seal, Chief Chiao turned to Shu Yunruo and said, "Yunruo, Xiao Wu will be the youngest student here, so keep an eye on her and make sure no one picks on her. Got it?" Shu Yunruo, who had always looked so unapproachable, actually nodded. That was a surprise. Chief Chiao smiled and was about to put his seal on the application form when, "Dad." They heard a shriek. That voice. Chief Chiao put down the seal, looked up, and found his daughter at the door. "Dad." Chiao Yi rushed in panting with flushed cheeks after all the running. Chief Chiao was concerned. "Why are you in such a rush? What's wrong?" Chiao Yi spotted Feng Wu as soon as she walked in. She couldn't stand to be in the same room as the girl. Chiao Yi snorted, walked up to Chief Chiao, and took his arm. "Dad, come with me. I need to talk to you." Chief Chiao waved his hand. "Why the rush? Let me put this seal on first." Chief Chiao wanted to put his seal on the application form first so that he could see Feng Wu and Shu Yunruo on their way. That way, he would be able to talk to his daughter alone. "Dad." Chiao Yi would never let her dad put his seal on the form, so she tried to drag him away. Chief Chiao had always doted on his daughter. Since Chiao Yi wouldn't relent, he could only give Feng Wu a wry smile and let his daughter drag him away. Chiao Yi burst into tears as soon as they went to the other room. Hearing the broken sobs coming from the other room, Shu Yunruo glanced at Feng Wu suspiciously. "Did you offend her before?" Feng Wu shrugged. "I slapped her the other day." Even someone as unperturbed as Shu Yunruo couldn't help but open his eyes wider when he heard those words. He then cleared his throat and gave Feng Wu a thumbs up. He had thought that she was a harmless little thing, but as it turned out, she was anything but harmless. However, that only made Shu Yunruo even more intrigued. In the other room, "Dad. This Feng Wu is abominable. Before she came to Imperial College. And after she got in." Chapter 1286, Leave. She's the worst student ever. Holding her father's arm, Chiao Yi trashed Feng Wu with the worst slander she could think of until Feng Wu sounded like the worst student alive. Chief Chiao was frowning the entire time without saying a word. Chiao Yi cried out, "Dad? She hit me." That statement set her father off. Chief Chiao asked, "What did you say?" Chiao Yi cried like a pretty flower in the rain. "Dad, it happened the other day in the Year 1 office." Feng Wu. It was Chiao Yi's coup de grace. She accused Feng Wu between broken sobs, making the latter into this domineering girl who had been abusing her power. Feng Wu had given Chief Chiao a good impression at first, but after Chiao Yi's repeated slander, Chief Chiao changed his opinion of Feng Wu as well. Is she really that kind of person? Chief Chiao frowned. Seeing that her father had wavered, Chiao Yi went on crying, making more excuses. "I've been getting along so well with young Lord Feng, but Feng Wu intervened, and now, young Lord Feng won't even talk to me. She must have said some bad things about me behind my back." Feng Wu would be dumbfounded if she heard that. Since when did Chiao Yi get along well with Feng Sun, and when did she ever intervene? She had never slandered Chiao Yi in front of Feng Sun. To be more precise, she had never talked about this woman in front of him. However, because Feng Wu didn't know what Chiao Yi had been saying about her, she couldn't come to her own defense. It just so happened that Chief Chiao would become this completely unreasonable old man whenever it came to Chiao Yi. He could be unbelievably biased. He flared up as soon as he heard that Feng Wu had hit Chiao Yi. An hour had passed by the time Chief Chiao and Chiao Yi came out of the room. Feng Wu realized that something was wrong as soon as she saw the look on Chief Chiao's face. She was right to assume that, since Chief Chiao immediately gave his verdict. He pushed the application forms back to Feng Wu. Feng Wu's heart sank, but she looked undisturbed when she asked, "Chief Chiao, what's that supposed to mean?" Chief Chiao smirked. "This isn't the place for a student like you, so please leave." He rejected Feng Wu's application. Feng Wu's pretty face darkened. She frowned and stared at Chief Chiao. Chief Chiao stared back at her and ordered, "Feng Wu, I think you should be on your way." Feng Wu smirked. "I now see what kind of person you are, Chief Chiao." Chief Chiao glared at Feng Wu. He believed that with his power, Feng Wu should already be on her knees and begging for forgiveness. However, the girl only stared back at him. Chief Chiao asked, "What kind of person am I, then?" Feng Wu smirked. "You're biased, opinionated and subjective, and abuse public power to retaliate against your personal enemy. I'm very disappointed." Feng Wu promptly turned to leave. "Stop right there." Chief Chiao wouldn't take the criticism lying down. Feng Wu turned around and sneered at him. "You believe everything Chiao Yi says without asking a single question. What would you call that if not biased and opinionated? You don't deserve to be the chief of Year 2. Wu." Chief Chiao almost had a heart attack. He had always considered himself the king of initial, and all his commands should be carried out without question. No one had ever dared defy him, let alone do it in front of other people. In other words, the unchallenged Lord of Initial had just been humiliated by Feng Wu. Chapter 1287. Skip grades? In your dreams. Chief Chiao shook with anger. Pointing at Feng Wu with a trembling finger, he said, "No wonder Chiao Yi says you're so sharp-tongued. That's how you were able to talk yourself out of that cheating incident." "Did you just say that I cheated in my exam?" Feng Wu smirked. Chief Chiao said, "Chiao Yi is your class teacher, and I'm sure she has the most accurate judgment of your character. Moreover, how dare you hit your teacher? Imperial College is ashamed to have a student like you. Get out of my sight." His black eyes were filled with rage, and it reminded one of an imminent storm. Spiritual essence sprang up, and an incredible pressure closed in on Feng Wu. Frowning, Shu Yunrua shielded Feng Wu with his body. Instantly, the rampant spiritual essence struck Shu Yunrua like a roaring dragon. Blood trickled down from the corner of Shu Yunrua's mouth, but he kept his ground. They had only met for the first time today, but he was defending her with his own life. Feng Wu would be lying if she said that she wasn't touched. Chief Chiao glared at Shu Yunru. "Out of my way." Wiping away the blood, Shu Yunrua looked up, and something fierce flashed in his eyes. "I thought this place was just and fair." Chief Chiao's eyes grew colder as he glared at Shu Yunru. Shu Yunrua wouldn't give in and kept his unblinking gaze on Chief Chiao as well. As the most talented teenager of Initial, he had his own pride and principles. Infuriated, Chief Chiao activated even more spiritual essence, which rushed toward Shu Yunrua. As the chief of the year, he wouldn't be threatened by a teenager. Feng Wu cursed inwardly when she saw what was going to happen. "Hear me out." Feng Wu stepped out so that Shu Yunrua was behind her, and she looked Chief Chiao in the eye. The look in her eyes was as sharp as an icy blade, which intimidated everyone. She was by no means the most powerful cultivator here, but just by standing there with her clothes flapping in the wind, she already reminded the others of a goddess of war. Even Chief Chiao was intimidated by her cold eyes. Staring at Chief Chiao, Feng Wu racked her brain. Chief Chiao wouldn't give her any chance now and had just told her to leave. What was more, he had the right to make that decision. "I don't want to hear anything you have to say," Chief Chiao said impatiently and waved her off. "Miss Feng, please leave." Dong walked up to Feng Wu with an expressionless face and a grim look in her eyes. Feng Wu glanced at Dong. Suddenly, her eyes lit up and she looked enlightened. Dong had an ominous feeling when she saw this, and she stared at Feng Wu. But before she could say anything, Feng Wu had walked up to her and whispered something in her ear. Dong paled suddenly, and she looked both enraged and terrified when she stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu only gave her a half-smile. "Senior Dong, would you please tell Chief Chiao that?" The entire time, Feng Wu remained completely unperturbed. Dong, on the other hand, clenched her fists. After throwing another dirty look at Feng Wu, she walked back to Chief Chiao. Chief Chiao only smirked. I don't care what connections you have. Feel free to have Mr. Feng speak up for you. Chiao Yi gloated and gave Feng Wu a taunting look. You want to skip grades? In your dreams. Chapter 1288. She saw through him. Chiao Yi was determined to keep Feng Wu in year 1 under her watch, so that she could do whatever she wanted to her. Seeing the taunting look on Chiao Yi's face, Feng Wu only smiled calmly. Dong walked up to Chief Chiao and whispered something in his ear. Instantly, Chief Chiao's face darkened, and he looked more awful than a cloudy sky. Judging by his reaction, Feng Wu knew that she had guessed right. She grinned. I heard that there's an exception in initial. If I can successfully pass a series of trials, I can join year 2 even without your permission. Is that true? Chief Yu was the one who had mentioned it to Feng Wu beforehand. How wise that woman was. Chief Chiao glared at Feng Wu with eyes that could freeze water into ice. Feng Wu only smiled as mildly as ever. Chief Chiao took a deep breath. Only now did he realize that this girl wasn't as easy to handle as he had assumed. If he didn't do something now, she might expose one of his biggest secrets. At that thought, Chief Chiao smirked. If you're bold enough to take that challenge, be my guest. The trials will be ready for you in 7 days. You can leave now. 7 days? That was longer than Feng Wu had expected, but she knew that she was pushing Chief Chiao's limits, and if she didn't stop now, she might set him off. She nodded. See you in 7 days then, Chief Chiao. Feng Wu turned to leave after saying those words. As she walked away, she could hear Chiao Yi's angry and unreconciled voice. Why did you give her permission to take the challenge? All her fame is fake. She cheated. Dad, why didn't you say no? Why are you letting her do it? Feng Wu grinned and laughed inwardly at the naive Chiao Yi. That woman knew nothing. Shu Yunhua walked down the mountain with Feng Wu. As usual, he was silent. Feng Wu couldn't help but glance at him. He had protected her for no reason, and she felt compelled to return that favor. Feng Wu smiled at Shu Yunhua. Senior Shu, are you sure you're going to be all right for offending Chief Chiao like that? Shu Yunhua only glanced at Feng Wu without saying anything. Feng Wu bit her lower lip. Won't he try to get back at you? Looking up at the sky, Shu Yunhua said quietly, I'm from the Gongshu family of Taiyuan. The Gongshu family of Taiyuan? Feng Wu immediately saw the light. It was one of the 9 major clans that used to rank somewhere in the middle, but which had been rising in status in the last few years. She was amazed that the first person she found to ask for directions was someone of the Gongshu family. So, are you using an alias now? Feng Wu asked curiously. It's my mother's maiden name. Shu Yunhua only realized how much personal information he was telling her after he said those words. That was so strange because he had always been a private person. After all these years in initial, Chief Chiao was the only person who knew his background. He couldn't understand why he was telling the girl so many things. There was something about this girl that would make one spill their secrets. At that thought, Shu Yunhua threw a dirty look at Feng Wu. Baffled, Feng Wu rubbed her nose and wondered what that was about. Shu Yunhua walked Feng Wu to the main road and told her, just follow the road. He left after giving Feng Wu the direction. Rubbing her nose, Feng Wu didn't understand why he was mad. What a moody teenager. Chapter 1289, Slander. Feng Wu went back to Fallen Star Yard to find a lot of people waiting for her. Feng Sun and Xian Yi were there, as well as Jun Linyuan. They were all sitting in the courtyard, and Feng Xiaoqi was pouring tea for them. Feng Sun shouted in an exaggerated tone, Hey, Feng Xiaoqi, what is it with your family and geniuses? Why is everyone here making breakthroughs so quickly? Feng Xiaoqi was about to answer when he heard footsteps. He threw himself into Feng Wu's arms when he saw who it was. Sister, you're back. Feng Wu patted Feng Xiaoqi on the head. He was usually a naive and shy boy, and entertaining guests was still a bit too much for him. But it was a necessary part of being a grown-up, so Feng Wu was determined to keep training him. Interacting with other people was as important as his cultivation practice. A grasp of mundane affairs was genuine knowledge. An understanding of worldly wisdom was true learning. Feng Wu didn't want Feng Xiaoqi to turn into a nerd that only cared about cultivation. "Why are all of you here?" Feng Wu asked Feng Sun in confusion. Feng Sun grinned. "For fun, of course. Didn't you hear?" "About what?" Feng Wu was perplexed. Feng Sun said, "That sister of yours, isn't Dugu Mingxi supposed to marry her? They're bringing the betrothal gifts today. How can you not know that?" As a matter of fact, Feng Wu really didn't know. She asked curiously, "Does the Dugu family really want her as a daughter-in-law?" Feng Sun smiled. "Not exactly. My info says that Dugu Mingxi will take her in as a concubine." That was to say, Feng Lu wasn't going to be the official wife. Feng Wu found that very reasonable. However, Feng Sun said, "Of course I won't let them do that, so I said no." Feng Wu stared at Feng Sun. "But why? Don't you understand? You little fool." Feng Sun jabbed Feng Wu's smooth forehead with a finger. "Feng Lu is your sister. If she becomes the Dugu family's concubine, your reputation will be ruined along with hers. That's why I won't let it happen." Feng Wu was speechless. "You little fool." If those words had been from Jun Linyuan, she would be halfway through the 4th trial already. "By the way, I heard that you went to Imperial College." Feng Sun didn't care about Feng Lu, but he wanted to know everything Feng Wu did. It suddenly occurred to Feng Wu that Jun Linyuan needed to be present at the trials 7 days later. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to finish her task. So, she nodded immediately. "That's right. I'm going to skip year 1. "That's my sister. How ambitious." Feng Sun gave her a thumbs up. "With your capability, you totally deserve to be in year 2. If that's the case, make sure you all come to watch me take the challenge 7 days later." Feng Wu grabbed the opportunity and invited the 3 men. "The challenge?" Feng Sun raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying that Xiao Lingxiao won't let you skip grades?" Feng Wu smiled. "It doesn't matter. I'll prove my capability." Feng Sun was confused. "But he should have let you. That old man likes talented students the most. He should think very highly of you." Chaoga added, "Chief Chiao's daughter is Chiao Yi." Feng Sun immediately saw the light. "So, someone has been saying bad things about you." He then smirked. "She's not the only person who knows how to do that. After what she did to you, I'll make sure she's no longer a teacher of Imperial College." Chapter 1290, The Arrogant Crown Prince. That was the benefit of being part of the privileged class. A single sentence from Feng Sun was enough to determine Miss Chiao Yi's fate. "And don't worry about skipping grades. I'll take care of it for you." Feng Sun patted his chest. He wouldn't let anyone pick on his sister. However, Feng Wu stopped him. "Wait." Her mission was to get into year 2, become a top 10 student, change Jun Linyuan's opinion of her, and cheer him up so that he would call her my little fool. To do that, Feng Wu would need an opportunity to demonstrate her capability, and the challenge was perfect. "I'll impress them with my own capability." Feng Wu looked at Feng Sun and said earnestly, "I'll win their respect myself." Feng Sun patted her on the head. "You know, if old Xiao is determined to make you fail, he'll make the challenge trials hell mode." "Huh?" Feng Wu looked confused. Feng Sun rolled his eyes at her. "What do you take that challenge for?" "It's known as Dragon's Gate, and the battles are divided into a few different levels. Dragon's Gate is used as the annual test for Year 2 students, and the battles come in 5 levels of difficulty: normal, difficult, elite, hell, and death." Feng Sun added, "Usually, for a test to skip grades, they'll use the normal level. Passing the trial at that level will make you the 700th student on their billboard. The equivalent ranking for the difficult level is 300th, and 100th for the elite level." He looked into Feng Wu's eyes and said, "Passing the hell level will make you 10th in their ranking system." As for the death level, that'll take you even higher up the ranking list. Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu. However, Chief Qiao is the one who will decide the level of the trial. So, apart from your conflict with Qiao Yi, have you offended him in any other way? Feng Wu was speechless. Seeing Feng Wu's reaction, Feng Sun was bemused. So, you have offended him. Feng Wu said, "Don't worry. I'm sure he won't try anything." Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu. "Are you sure you don't need me to talk to someone? Have some faith in me. There aren't many things in the imperial capital that I can't handle. Even if I can't, you can always ask Boss Jun for help." Speaking of Jun Linyuan, Feng Wu hadn't even glanced at him since she came back. She was still holding a grudge against him. Before, at World Tower, Jun Linyuan had stormed off after scolding her, and that had been very humiliating. "By the way, Boss Jun, are you free 7 days later?" Feng Sun blurted out when he saw Feng Wu staring at Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu's heart raced. She didn't care about other people, but Jun Linyuan had to be there. Otherwise, she would fail her mission. No. The Crown Prince stared at Feng Wu, and something seemed to flicker in his eyes. What? Feng Wu's stomach lurched. Was Jun Linyuan not going to go? But he had to. Feng Wu tugged at Feng Sun and winked at him. Feng Sun immediately took the hint, and realized that Feng Wu wanted Boss Jun there to see her demonstrate her power. Feng Sun grinned and walked up to Jun Linyuan. "Boss Jun, what are you doing that day? Would you like to join me and go to Initial?" The Crown Prince glanced at the nervous Feng Wu and said arrogantly, "I don't have time for that." Feng Sun shrugged and looked at Feng Wu in resignation, his gesture indicating that there was nothing more he could do. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead and wondered if Jun Linyuan was waiting for her to beg him. Just then Jun Linyuan rose to his feet. Immediately, he gave off an indescribable pressure which affected everyone else around him. Chapter 1291. Who would dare pick on her? Was he leaving? Without thinking, Feng Wu ran up to him and grabbed him by his wide sleeve. She seemed so eager. Xian Yi and Feng Sun exchanged looks, and Feng Sun raised an eyebrow, the expression on his face saying, "What did I tell you? Little Feng Wu is taking the initiative these days." Chaoga and Qiuling, on the other hand, saw astonishment in each other's eyes. This didn't seem right. Hadn't Feng Wu repeatedly said that she didn't like Jun Linyuan, she found him repulsive, and that he would be the last person on earth she would fall in love with? But what was she doing now? Feng Wu didn't care about what other people thought. She stood in front of Jun Linyuan and blocked his way. Frowning, Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu with his beautiful eyes and said, "Move." The energy he gave off was so intimidating that no one else dared come closer. But Feng Wu couldn't care less about that. Tugging at Jun Linyuan's sleeve, she asked softly, "Brother Jun, are you really not coming?" Jun Linyuan only gave her an indifferent glance and went on ignoring her. Feng Wu knew that look only too well. It meant beg me and I'll be there. Feng Wu was speechless. Did he want to make her beg him in front of so many people? She had her dignity as well. Biting her lower lip, Feng Wu hesitated. The Crown Prince started walking at an unhurried pace and would soon be out the door. Jun Linyuan. Biting her lower lip, Feng Wu said, "I'm begging you. Please come." "What?" The Crown Prince's black eyes twinkled. Tugging at his sleeve, Feng Wu said, "Yes, I'm begging you. Will you please come and watch?" Jun Linyuan snorted and raised his chin. "Are you begging me now?" Feng Wu said, "Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing now. Will you please come watch me fight?" She swayed his arm back and forth as she spoke. The handsome teenager crossed his arms behind his back and raised his chin. He might look arrogant, but anyone who knew him well could see that he was gloating. Clearing his throat, he said, "Since you asked so sincerely, I suppose I can spare some time and go watch the battle that day." How could he sound so reluctant when he was filled with joy? The corner of Feng Sun's mouth twitched. Chaoga and Qiuling exchanged looks, and both felt perplexed. Feng Xiaoqi lowered his head and bit his lip. "She's my sister, Even His Royal Highness can't take her away from me. At that thought, Feng Xiaoqi threw a dirty look at Jun Linyuan. What? Feng Sun grinned when he saw the look on Feng Xiaoqi's face, and he rubbed the boy's head. What? Are you not happy, little guy? Feng Xiaoqi grunted like a wolf cub. Feng Sun found him amusing. Patting the boy on the shoulder, he said, Boss Jun is going to look after your sister from now on, and that's a good thing. No one will dare pick on her again. Feng Xiaoqi gritted his teeth. I'll protect my sister. Well, aren't you an ambitious little thing? However, it'll be a while before you can do that. Hey, where are you going? Practice. Feng Xiaoqi stormed off. Feng Wu didn't notice Feng Xiaoqi's reaction, because something else just occurred to her. Hey, do you guys know Rong Yang the alchemist? Feng Wu asked. Feng Sun looked at her. What do you need him for? Feng Wu said, to forge a sword. Chapter 1292, Rainy Autumn Mountain. Ever since Feng Wu started working on Fallen Star swordplay, her flaming sword was no longer powerful enough. Twice in a row, her inadequate weapon had almost led to her downfall. She said, I have some Fallen Star iron on hand, and I need his help to forge my Fallen Star sword. I've looked everywhere, but I still can't find him. Rong Yang was the best alchemist in the Junwo Empire, and his expertise was in forging weapons. Feng Wu couldn't think of a better candidate for the job. Feng Wu had been searching for him for a while. After exhausting her resources, however, she still couldn't find Master Rong Yang. Ah, Feng Sun laughed when he heard that. Of course you can't find him because… Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Sun, and the latter immediately shut up. Ahem. Feng Sun tried to cover up his embarrassment by clearing his throat. He then winked at Feng Wu, reminding her that she should ask Jun Linyuan for help. Given how smart Feng Wu was, she immediately took the hint. So, does your Royal Highness know where Master Rong Yang is? Feng Wu asked eagerly as she tugged at Jun Linyuan's sleeve. Fallen Star Sword. If the Master could forge one for Feng Wu, she would have a much better chance of getting through Dragon's Gate. At that thought, Feng Wu went on giving Jun Linyuan pleading looks. No man could turn away from those eyes, especially when the man was in love with her. However, the arrogant crown prince wouldn't let his expression betray him. There was a big frown on his handsome face when he said, Master Rong Yang will only meet those he think he can bond with. I'm sure I can bond with him. Tugging at Jun Linyuan's sleeve, Feng Wu said, all elderly people like me and they're always happy to see me. It's true. Jun Linyuan was rendered speechless. Feng Wu looked eagerly at him. In the end, the crown prince surrendered to her pitiful eyes. Get me some pen and paper. No problem. Excited, Feng Wu ran away before coming back almost immediately with all the stationery Jun Linyuan needed. He then glanced at Feng Wu and she immediately took the hint. Rolling up her sleeves, she started rubbing the ink stick on the inkstone. Picking up a writing brush with his right hand, Jun Linyuan started painting. Before long, he had finished a painting of Rainy Autumn Mountain. He then put the writing brush down, crossed his hands behind his back, and walked away. Feng Sun and Xian Yi followed him with wry smiles on their faces. Chaoga was bewildered as she watched them leave. What does His Royal Highness mean by this? Instead of giving you an address, he drew a picture? Feng Wu was equally baffled and couldn't look away from the painting. Jun Linyuan kept walking, and Feng Sun quickly caught up with him. Boss Jun, that painting was so vague. How is little Feng Wu supposed to guess what you mean? Xian Yi shook his head as well. If they hadn't known the address already, they wouldn't be able to guess the answer either. However, the crown prince only raised his chin and grunted slightly. She'll figure it out. Feng Sun smiled bitterly. Boss Jun, not everyone is as smart as you are. I bet you that little Feng Wu won't be able to get the answer. Xian Yi thought the same because without the right hint, one might never guess the address. Feng Wu carefully studied every inch of the painting. Rainy Autumn Mountain. Jun Linyuan was a great painter. The painting depicted an empty mountain after an autumn rain, and silver moonlight poured into the woods. Chapter 1293. The Crown Prince's Attitude Toward Feng Wu. The atmosphere created by the painting was so profound that before one knew it, they were completely absorbed. Feng Wu hung the painting on the wall and sat down in front of it with her legs crossed. She then studied it with unblinking eyes. Chaoga and Qiuling tried to make as little noise as possible, fearing that they might disturb Feng Wu. Seeing the way Feng Wu sat there, absorbed in the painting, Chaoga and Qiuling exchanged looks and left the room, closing the door behind them. Everyone in Fallen Star Yard cared about Feng Wu. "Has Miss Wu found the answer yet?" asked Granny Zhao. Qiuling gave her a wry smile. "Miss Wu has been sitting there for hours already." Granny Zhao frowned. "All we have is a painting. That's so difficult." Qiuling nodded. "You don't say. We're supposed to guess the address from a painting alone without any other hints. That's impossible." Chaoga frowned. "If we can't find Master Rongyang, Xiao Wu won't have a proper weapon, and she may fail her challenge." Qiuling said, "A lot of people have already heard that Miss Wu is going to take the challenge. It'll be so humiliating for her if she fails." They were standing by the wall as they chatted, but they didn't know that someone had been eavesdropping on the other side of the wall. Feng Wu? Skipping a grade? Master Rongyang? Fallen Star Sword? It was none other than Zhuo Qingyu. Dugu Mingxi was here at the Feng Manor for the marriage proposal that day, and Zhuo Qingyu and Dugu Yamo had tagged along. It just so happened that they overheard the conversation. The two of them quietly went back to their carriage. Dugu Yamo asked, "Is Feng Wu skipping year 1? Qingyu, aren't you in year 2 now? Do you know about this?" Zhuo Qingyu took a deep breath. She had been busy with something at home and hadn't gone to school for a few days. She didn't expect something so major to happen while she was away. "I'll ask around." And that was the first thing she did when she went back home. The Zhuo family was well connected, and Zhuo Qingyu was treated like a goddess in Initial. She was able to find out everything in no time. In less than an hour, she received the information she wanted. Feng Wu has entered Initial. And Shu Yunruo walked her up the mountain. Chief Qiao rejected her because of Miss Qiao Yi. And Feng Wu is taking the Dragon's Gate challenge in 7 days. Crumpling the paper up in her hand, Zhuo Qingyu gritted her teeth. "Feng Wu, I'm actually impressed. Shu Yunruo is a direct descendant of the Gongshu family, and he's never been close to anybody. Why did he show you the way the first time he met you? What's your relationship with him?" Dragon's Gate, Zhuo Qingyu knew that she alone wasn't capable enough to stop Feng Wu, so she gathered the information together and went to talk to Zhuo Ming. Master Zhuo was in a bad mood these days. His luck had been bad ever since the incident at the World Tower the other day. Nothing seemed to go his way, be it his cultivation or work. Zhuo Qingyu cut to the chase as soon as she walked in. "Father, I think this is a great opportunity for us." Zhuo Qingyu's eyes flickered. "If Feng Wu wants to get into year 2, let's make sure that she stays in Dragon's Gate and never comes out." Zhuo Ming felt a phantom headache as soon as he heard Feng Wu's name. Chapter 1294. The Answer. "Father, students die in Dragon's Gate all the time, so why can't it happen to her? That way, our family won't even be a suspect." "Father, have you forgotten about my brother? He would never have died if it wasn't for Feng Wu." "Father, have you forgotten about His Royal Highness' attitude toward Feng Wu?" Of course, Zhuo Ming remembered everything. He even suspected that his bad luck recently had something to do with the Crown Prince. The thought of the Crown Prince taking Feng Wu's side alone was enough to infuriate Zhuo Ming. "Father, there's also my sister, that was the last straw." Yes, they had to think about Zhuo Qinghuan's future as well. If the Crown Prince really was in love with Feng Wu, what should Zhuo Qinghuan do? The Zhuo clan had invested everything in Zhuo Qinghuan. Feng Wu had to die, and they were willing to pay any price for that to happen. There was a cold look in Zhuo Ming's eyes. "What's your plan?" He looked at Zhuo Qingyu. He had realized that this daughter of his was becoming better and better at formulating strategies. She might actually lead this family to prosperity. Zhuo Qingyu lowered her voice and whispered in Zhuo Ming's ear. She didn't say much, but everything was to the point. All of Zhuo Qingyu's connections were in the younger generation, so she had to ask for her family's help. After some consideration, Zhuo Ming said yes. Zhuo Qingyu flushed, and her eyes flickered with excitement. Qingyu, if your plan works, I'll make sure you're properly rewarded for it. Zhuo Qingyu put a hand on Zhuo Qingyu's slim shoulder and praised her. Zhuo Qingyu rubbed her hands in excitement. Dad, I'm a part of this family, and it's my duty to make it prosper. Although I'm a girl, it doesn't make me any less devoted to this family. Good. Zhuo Ming felt elated and conflicted at the same time. He had plenty of sons, but the two daughters were the best. Zhuo Ming said, "Talk to Uncle He. He'll give you all the help you need." Feng Wu had no idea that the Zhuo family was already on to her. Night had fallen, but she was still looking at the painting. She couldn't understand why she still couldn't find an answer. There was a spring, some giant rocks, and flowing water. And an eagle soared in the sky. There was also a pine tree, a Chinese parasol, and a ginkgo tree. She could hear Qiuling's low voice outside the door. "Watch it. Don't let the fruit fall. The noise will disturb Miss Wu." Qiaoge asked, "How about I cut down this tree?" Qiuling shook her head. "Don't. Miss Wu brought it all the way here from the highest peak." All of a sudden, an idea struck Feng Wu like a bolt of lightning. She was enlightened. Feng Wu had been an avid reader since she was little and had memorized the names of all the places in the Zhenwo Empire. Her eyes lit up. If that soaring eagle referred to the highest peak, she remembered that there was a valley near that peak known as Three Trees. It was a very straightforward name. A pine tree, a Chinese parasol, and a ginkgo tree. Feng Wu looked around the painting and saw that those three trees were indeed the only distinctive ones. Feng Wu let out a breath of relief. Finally, she had found the answer. Jun Linyuan was indeed a very clever man. By then, the sky was already turning light. Chapter 1295. Boss Jun, do you like Feng Wu? Squeak. Feng Wu pushed the door open and came out. Qiuling and the others cried out in surprise. "Miss Wu, there you are." Qiaoge asked excitedly, "Xiao Wu, have you figured it out?" Feng Wu looked at the other members of Fallen Star Yard. None of them had gotten any sleep the night before, and they all looked rather pale. No matter how difficult life was in the outside world, these lovely people would always be there for her. Feng Wu felt much more reassured whenever she thought of them. "Yes, I have. I'm going to Three Trees Valley now. You guys just stay here and get some rest." Feng Wu jumped onto her horse and sped off. "Xiao Wu, I'm going with you." Qiaoge left after Feng Wu. "Put that painting in a safe place and don't lose it," Feng Wu shouted. As soon as she left Fallen Star Yard, the Crown Prince's residents heard the news. In the Crown Prince's study, the Crown Prince sat quietly at his desk with his legs crossed and his eyes closed. The candle cast shadows on his face, and his sculptured profile was stunning. While the Crown Prince and Xian Yi were cultivating, Feng Sun was restless. He walked around in circles and kept mumbling to himself. Can Xiao Wu figure out that riddle or not? Boss Jun, are you sure that painting isn't too difficult? There are so many distracting elements in it. Gosh, I hope she didn't stay up late. Sleep is so important for girls her age. Irritated, Xian Yi snapped at him. Don't you worry. Little Feng Wu is very smart. I'm sure she'll figure it out in 3 days. Feng Sun pulled a long face. But Boss Jun always hides a cultivation technique in each of his paintings. She won't be able to figure out the answer before she learns the technique. Xian Yi nodded because that was true. Feng Sun and Xian Yi turned to Jun Linyuan in unison. The Crown Prince still sat there, looking unperturbed. He then said indifferently, "She's going to figure it out before the end of the day." Feng Sun and Xian Yi smiled bitterly. If she had to learn the technique before figuring out the answer, there was no way. "Your Royal Highness." A man dressed head to toe in black walked into the study. The crown prince said, "What?" The man said, "Miss Feng Wu has figured out the answer and is on her way to Three Trees Valley." "What?" Feng Sun jumped to his feet and yelled, "Are you sure? She really figured out the answer?" The man said quietly, "Yes." "OMG!" Feng Sun cried out. So, it took little Feng Wu less than a night to learn the technique and figure out the answer. He was utterly amazed by her amazing sense of perception. Xian Yi nudged Feng Sun with an elbow to make him look at Jun Linyuan. Feng Sun looked up involuntarily and saw their boss Jun smiling. His eyes twinkled and there was obvious pride on his face. "Boss Jun, do you like Feng Wu?" Feng Sun blurted out the question. The proud look instantly vanished from Jun Linyuan's face. He stared at Feng Sun with his cold, piercing eyes. Chapter 1296. Luckily, it was her. "Get out of my sight, both of you." Crossing his hands behind his back, Jun Linyuan left the study while Feng Sun and Xian Yi looked at each other in bewilderment. They exchanged looks of amazement. "Boss Jun didn't beat me up this time. Do you want to get beaten up?" "I don't, but the last time I asked him that question he reacted much more violently. I think he's handling it much better now. I'll ask him again next time." Despite Boss Jun's pride, Feng Sun had much more confidence in the couple now. Feng Wu had no idea what was going on in the Crown Prince's residence. Right now, she and Chaoga were headed for the highest peak that was known as Grand. The horses could only take them as far as the foot of the mountain, and from there they had to walk the rest of the way. Grand was indeed as majestic as the name suggested. Even when they threw their heads back, they couldn't see the peak. The climb up the mountain was strenuous and dangerous, but that didn't stop Feng Wu and Chaoga. They started early in the morning and reached the top at noon. Once they were there, they saw a valley on the other side, which was 3 trees. "Wait." Feng Wu stopped Chaoga, who was about to dash off toward the valley. Chaoga was confused. Feng Wu shook her head. "Not many people know that Master Rongyang is living in seclusion here, but I'm sure he's set up some sort of defense system. We have to be careful in the woods here." She then gave Chaoga a mask. This mask can stop you from breathing in miasma as well as neutralize other types of toxins to some extent. After making some preparations, they entered the woods. At first, the ground was mainly covered in bushes, and they could still see the sun. As they went further in, however, the trees grew taller, and the thick canopy blocked out the light. It became dimmer and dimmer. "Something feels off. My heart is racing." Chaoga looked around, feeling alarmed. Feng Wu pointed out, "It's too quiet." "That's right." Realization struck Chaoga. "It's way too quiet. We should at least hear some birds or animals, but nothing has made any noise. This silence is so creepy." "Why is that?" Studying the plants, Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. "You'll soon find out." "Huh." Chaoga was confused. Just then, Feng Wu grabbed Chaoga's hand and cried out, "Run." Instinctively, Chaoga followed Feng Wu's instruction and took off as soon as she heard her command. She looked over her shoulder a moment later, only to see some bright green poisonous gas rushing toward them. "What's this?" "It's the miasma." Feng Wu lowered her voice. "We must outrun this miasma. That's the only way we can survive to meet Master Rongyang. These woods form a formation. Luckily, I'm still able to see through it, so just follow me." Feng Wu led the way and Chaoga followed close behind. "Run, run, run." Chaoga watched as Feng Wu made her way straight ahead. There were bushes, streams, giant rocks, and even cliffs in her way, but Feng Wu kept pushing forward. Anyone else would have questioned Feng Wu's judgment and stopped. Luckily, this was Chaoga. Chapter 1297. Sorry about that. Chaoga had always trusted Feng Wu unconditionally. She would jump off a cliff if Feng Wu told her to, let alone run through some obstacles. However, it was only after Chaoga had jumped off the cliff that she realized that it wasn't a cliff at all, but a 1-meter-high wall. With Feng Wu's guidance, the two of them ran out of the woods in less than 15 minutes. Chowga looked over her shoulder again and saw that the miasma had vanished. Phew, that was close. Chowga let out a breath of relief. I would have been dead by now if I were on my own. No, you wouldn't. Feng Wu smiled. The miasma isn't lethal. It's more like a threat than a killing weapon. Let's go. Once they were out of the woods, the journey afterward was much easier. After following a wooden plank path that was several kilometers long, Feng Wu and Chowga stopped outside a courtyard. It was a quiet and simple courtyard with a broken plaque above the front gate. They could faintly make out one of the characters on it, which said Rong. It was a 3-tiered courtyard, but they didn't know what it was like inside, because they were stopped at the front gate. Stop! A stalwart man resembling a big tower bellowed at them. With that word, he struck at Feng Wu. The power was almost savage enough to split the sky open. Feng Wu stumbled back with Chowga, and only stopped after backing away 7 steps. How savage! With one look, Feng Wu saw that the giant was too strong for her to confront head-on. After some calculations, Feng Wu realized that she wouldn't be able to withstand 3 strikes from this man. Just then, there were quick footsteps from inside, and someone soon walked up to Feng Wu. Hey Feng Wu, what are you doing here? It was Zhuqingyu. The Zhou family. Feng Wu looked from the dilapidated courtyard to Zhuqingyu, and her face turned grim. What are you doing here, then? Feng Wu retorted this couldn't be a coincidence. Zhuqingyu couldn't just happen to be here on the same day as them. Zhuqingyu smiled. My family needs a favor from Master Rong Yang, and I thought I could just tag along. Feng Wu nodded. Zhuqingyu added, Xiao Wu, since we're so familiar with each other, I guess I can let you in on a secret. My family is here to ask Master Rong Yang to forge a weapon for us. Feng Wu frowned. To forge a weapon? Even a master like Rong Yang couldn't make 2 formidable weapons at once. Feng Wu only had as little as 6 days left. Was the Zhou family doing this on purpose? Feng Wu bit her lips so hard that it almost bled. Feng Wu could control her temper, but not Chowga. She shoved Zhuqingyu. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? You knew that we were coming to see Master Rong Yang, so you came here first. You sleazy bitch. Chowga was so angry that she wanted to hit Zhuqingyu. However, Zhuqingyu was a more capable cultivator than Chowga was, and she easily pushed Chowga away. Slowly smoothing out the non-existent wrinkles in her clothes, Zhuqingyu darted a contemptuous glance at Feng Wu, and her tone was full of ridicule. I see. You're here to ask Master Rong Yang to forge a weapon for you, too, right? Sorry about that, but my family got here first. Chapter 1298, A Taunting Smile. You know, we're not asking the Master to forge just any weapon, but a very powerful one. Master Rong Yang has his own rules, and he'll only make 1 such weapon a year. Since he's going to make one for my family this year, I'm afraid you'll have to come back next year. Please leave now. Zhuqingyu looked at Feng Wu in an arrogant manner and went back inside. She had spoken so fast, and left before Feng Wu and Chowga could react. She got here first and is taunting us. Only then did Chowga realize what had happened, and she looked at Feng Wu in disbelief. Someone had gotten here first, and that idea frustrated Feng Wu as well. However, she soon smiled again. Xiao Wu. Chowga was so anxious and was at a loss over what to do when she saw the smile on Feng Wu's face, which baffled her. Feng Wu patted Chowga on the shoulder. Don't worry. Just follow me. She then walked to the front gate. Stop. The giant glared at Feng Wu and wouldn't let her pass. Feng Wu smiled. Why did you let her in, but not us? Is it because I forgot to pay you? After that, a roasted chicken appeared in Feng Wu's hand. Gulp. Feng Wu could hear the man swallow. Tossing the chicken as far as she could, Feng Wu grabbed Chowga and ran into the courtyard. Chowga stared at Feng Wu in bewilderment. How did you know that would work? Feng Wu smiled. I saw pieces of chicken bones stuck between that man's teeth when he spoke. That was why I knew he could be bought. Chowga was amazed. She had been standing in front of him with Feng Wu, but she had completely missed that detail, nor had she been able to come up with any solutions. How could there be so much difference in IQ? Stop! A cold voice rang out, and Feng Wu looked up to find an old steward standing in front of them with a stern look on his face. Who are you people? Chowga said involuntarily, we want to ask Master Rong Yang to forge a sword. A sword? Yes. Just when Chowga thought that the old steward was going to chase them away, he said, if you're going to ask the master, you have to do it properly. Feng Wu sensed a malicious gaze from a window, and she turned around abruptly. As expected, she looked right into Zhuo Qingyu's eyes. It was indeed her. Caught by Feng Wu, Zhuo Qingyu didn't look away. Instead, she gave Feng Wu a taunting smile. Meanwhile, the old steward told Chowga, if you want to see my master, come with me. Feng Wu saw the smile on Zhuo Qingyu's face widen. It didn't take a genius to figure out that Zhuo Qingyu was behind this, and this man had to be working for her. The old steward led Feng Wu and Chowga to a pile of black sand and said coldly, move this pile over there to the stove. How much do you need? Asked Feng Wu. All of it by the end of tonight. Finish the job or get the hell out. The old steward was unbelievably mean. It was so obvious that Zhuo Qingyu had planned this. Turning around, Feng Wu indeed saw the gloating smile on Zhuo Qingyu's face. Chapter 1299, Untitled. By then, Chowga had realized what was going on as well, so she tugged at Feng Wu and said, that stupid woman has already bought the people here, and will only humiliate ourselves. Xiao Wu, let's just leave. Chowga couldn't bring herself to see Feng Wu get humiliated. However, Feng Wu only smiled. No, we're not leaving. Xiao Wu. Feng Wu said, it's just some black sand, isn't it? We have to show some sincerity if we want to see Master Rong Yang. So let's do this. Chowga asked, Xiao Wu, are you sure? Everywhere they turned, all they saw was black sand. They might not be able to finish the job even after 10 days, let alone before sundown. It was an impossible task. Since Feng Wu had a plan, she didn't mind the seemingly impossible mission. She gave Chowga a bright smile and said, we need to show them that we really want this. Let's get to work. Zhuo Qingyu had been standing by the window the whole time so that she could laugh at Feng Wu. However, she was utterly dumbfounded when she saw Feng Wu start working without hesitation. She couldn't understand what Feng Wu was thinking. Chowga was equally intrigued, so she asked Feng Wu, what's your plan? Feng Wu smiled. Don't worry. It's going to work out just fine. No one could guess what Feng Wu's plan was, though. Chowga said, but there's so much. Feng Wu asked, what's so difficult about that? With the storage bag she got from Jun Linyuan, Feng Wu was able to move all the black sand in one go. The old steward had thought that they would never be able to finish before sundown. That way, he could chase them off and get his reward from Miss Sua. However, when he came back after just a short trip to the kitchen, all the black sand had been moved to the designated spot. They hadn't even used a basket. Is there anything else I can do for you? Feng Wu grinned at the old steward. The old man gritted his teeth. The brighter Feng Wu's smile, the harder he gritted his teeth. Of course there's more. Everyone who wants to see my master has to finish 3 tasks, and that was only the first one. Now, you have to refine all this sand into iron. The steward stared at Feng Wu. If you don't finish refining the sand by sunrise, I'm going to ask you to leave. Making iron. Feng Wu rubbed her chin. I don't have time for this. Just then she heard a sound in her ring space. Little Phoenix. With a wave of her hand, Feng Wu summoned the bird. Wow! Little Phoenix was thrilled when it saw the black sand. It shrieked and buried its little body in the sand. Chowga asked, what's its problem? Feng Wu had an idea, but she wasn't sure. After all, Little Phoenix was too tiny to devour all this sand. However, what happened next amazed Feng Wu. Rustle. The black sand was disappearing as she watched. Hearing the sound, the old man ran out to see what was going on. He then saw the two girls standing there, staring at the pile of black sand. He immediately found an excuse to yell at them. "Why are you just standing there? Get to work." Chapter 1300, Untitled. However, before the old steward could say anything else, the amount of black sand began to decrease as he watched. Why was it decreasing? What was going on? To his astonishment, as the black sand disappeared, refined iron started to appear on the ground, and the iron had clearly been purified with fire. What is going on here? The old steward couldn't believe his eyes. The black sand couldn't just turn into refined iron all by itself. Shrugging, Feng Wu pointed at something in front of them. "See for yourself." The old steward's eyes widened. He saw a small, fist-sized bird swallowing the black sand. However, it was doing something else at the same time. As it ate the sand, refined iron came out its other end. The old steward watched this in astonishment. That was impossible. He couldn't believe it. He stared at Feng Wu. This bird can refine the sand just like that? What was more, it didn't even need to take a break. As its beak opened and closed, refined iron just kept coming out of its rear. Before long, there was a whole basket of it. It was the purest refined iron. As a matter of fact, Feng Wu hadn't seen this side of Little Phoenix before either, and it was an eye-opener as well. However, she only smiled mildly and said, "That's how we do it at my place. Is it not done the same way here?" The same way? Of course not. No one else had an iron refining bird at home. Otherwise, the iron refiners would go out of work. The old steward anxiously picked up a piece of iron and examined it. He almost passed out at what he found. He thought that he could kick the girl out by saying that the iron was of poor quality. However, after taking a look, he saw that the refined iron was significantly better than that made by professional refiners. Feng Wu smiled at the old steward and wondered what he would do next. Chowga sneered at the old steward. She couldn't think of a reason why the old man would still take the Zhou family's side. The old steward was indeed wavering. But in the end, he still chose to favor the Zhou family. I'd like to see this little bird do it for an entire night." The old man stormed off after saying those words. Chowga made a face as the old steward walked away. That man doesn't know what he's talking about. I wonder how much the Zhou family paid him. "Xiao Wu, what should we do now?" Taking Feng Wu's hand, Chowga looked distressed. Feng Wu already had a plan. She had already expected the old steward's reaction, so she smiled and said, "If he wants to keep us from seeing his master, I'll make sure he fails." Chowga was bewildered. Feng Wu smiled. The old steward wasn't the only employee here, and judging from his behavior, not all Master Rong Yang's subordinates were very loyal to him. At that thought, Feng Wu whispered something in Chowga's ear. Chowga's eyes lit up as she listened. Meanwhile, the old steward rushed angrily to a remote corner of the house. There, he talked to Zhou Qingyu in secret. The old steward said anxiously, "Miss Zhou, that girl isn't easy to handle at all. She has one trick after another, and I'm running out of ways to stop her." Zhou Qingyu had seen everything that happened. Chapter 1301, Untitled. Feng Wu was indeed very impressive. Any other person would have been kicked out by the old steward by now. Not only was she staying, she had also amazed him over and over. How incredible! Zhou Qingyu refused to believe that she couldn't stop Feng Wu. She gritted her teeth. "Our only option now is to have Master Rong Yang start forging my family's weapon as soon as possible. By the way, has the master started yet?" Once the master started working, he would shut himself away, and there was no way that Feng Wu would be able to see him. Zhou Qingyu was a little worried, because there seemed to be something about Feng Wu that made people want to get close to her, and she didn't want Master Rong Yang to be affected as well. The old steward gave her a wry smile. "The master is very happy with the material you brought today, and he's meditating in his office at the moment. The forging hasn't started yet." Rest assured, Miss Sua, the master usually stays in his room when he's meditating, and it's highly unlikely that he'll meet Miss Feng. Even the old steward felt threatened by Feng Wu, let alone Zhuo Qingyu. Although he had tried to make things very difficult for Feng Wu, after the first two incidents, he even began to feel sorry for the girl, and admired her a little. Later that night, Feng Wu and Chaoge were led into the woodshed as a place to sleep. It was a dry, tiny room with a suffocating smell because of all the black sand dust in the air, since it was close to the mine. While Chaoge was full of complaints, Feng Wu remained very calm. Feng Wu asked, "By the way, where are you on the job I gave you earlier?" Chaoge nodded with a smile. "I went to talk to Aunt Li in the kitchen. Her son works on the furnace in the refinery room, and I was able to get some information from her. The Zhuo family indeed already sent their material over, and their only request is for the forging to start as soon as possible. The material they sent over is dragon scale gold, which is supposed to be very precious." Feng Wu nodded. "That's indeed a very rare material. I see that the Zhuo family accumulated some good stuff over the years. They can randomly pull out something so amazing." What Feng Wu didn't know was that dragon scale gold was very hard to come by, even for the Zhuo family. However, they were willing to give all they had just to defeat her. Chaoge asked, "Xiao Wu, do you want that dragon scale gold?" Rubbing her chin, Feng Wu pondered and said, "Adding the dragon scale gold to my fallen star sword will certainly improve its durability and defensive abilities." Chaoge clapped her hands and said, "What are we waiting for, then? Let's take it." Feng Wu snapped, "Easier said than done. Plus, even if we get our hands on that dragon scale gold, it'll still be very difficult to add it to my fallen star sword. I wonder if Master Rong Yang can do it." All of a sudden, her eyes lit up. "Xiao Wu, do you have a plan?" Chaoge asked nervously. Whenever Feng Wu got that expression on her face, it meant that an idea had just hit her. She smiled a little. "Master Rong Yang is a supreme-level weapon refiner right now. What do you think he'll do if I help him further improve his skills?" Chaoge smacked the table excitedly. "I would love to see that happen if I were him." Feng Wu nodded with a smile. Chaoge then asked, "Xiao Wu, do you know how to improve Master Rong Yang's skills?" Feng Wu shook her head, still smiling. That baffled Chaoge, and she wondered what Xiao Wu's plan was. Chapter 1302, Untitled. While Chaoge was still feeling bewildered, Feng Wu rose to her feet and headed for the door. "Xiao Wu." Chaoge was confused. Feng Wu said, "Wait here. I'll be back when I'm done." What did she mean by, "when I'm done"? As curious as Chaoge was, she had always followed Feng Wu's instructions unconditionally. She nodded and said, "All right, I'll wait for you here. But how are you going to get out? I'm sure that old man and Zhuo Qingyu have someone watching us." Feng Wu smiled. "I think it's about time." "What time?" Chaoge scratched her head. They were facing the same problem, but Feng Wu's words confused her once again, like they always did. Knock, knock, knock. There was a knock at the door. Feng Wu opened it. A young maid of 15 or 16 stood outside. There was a mean look on her face, and she stared at Feng Wu with eyes filled with animosity. Thump. She carelessly put down 2 bowls of water and 2 steamed buns as hard as rock on the ground. The buns rolled over the ground and got covered in dust, and most of the water in the 2 bowls was spilt. The maid had obviously been paid off by Zhuo Qingyu. She threw a dirty look at Feng Wu and was ready to leave. Feng Wu asked indifferently, "How much did Zhuo Qingyu pay you?" "I'll double it." "Eh." The maid smirked. "Seriously? Are you trying to compete with Miss Sua?" Feng Wu opened her palm and showed the maid a shiny silver ingot. "Tell me your name, and this is yours." The maid gave Feng Wu a suspicious look, but Feng Wu only smiled at her. That ingot was worth a small fortune, and the maid was tempted. She didn't think that giving her name was too big a deal. "I'm Hong Yue." Snatching the silver out of Feng Wu's hand, the maid turned to leave. However, she then heard someone speaking quietly. "So, Miss Hong Yue, it's time you got some rest." Before Hong Yue knew it, Feng Wu hit her in the neck with the side of her palm. Thump. Hong Yue collapsed to the ground. Chaoga looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Xiao Wu. Feng Wu smiled, picked Hong Yue up, and gave Chaoga a meaningful look. I'll dress up like her and walk out of here. Chaoga immediately saw the light. Why didn't I think of that? With Chaoga's help, Feng Wu soon changed into Hong Yue's clothes and left the room with the tray. In the courtyard where Zhuo Qingyu was staying. She should have gone back to town already, but since Feng Wu was here, she had decided to stay behind. Rui, her chambermaid, quickly walked up to her and whispered in her ear, "Miss, I've had the water and steamed buns sent to them. The Rong Manor wasn't some crude coal mine, and they would never mistreat visitors like this." Zhuo Qingyu had sent the water and steamed buns just to humiliate Feng Wu. Did they eat them? Zhuo Qingyu was gloating. Rui nodded with a smile. They have to, if they don't want to starve to death. Plus. She giggled. I added something in both the water and the steamed buns. They'll be busy running back and forth between that shed and the toilet tonight. Zhuo Qingyu looked very pleased. Since Feng Wu was challenging the Zhuo family, she decided that Feng Wu had to disappear. While she was thinking that Feng Wu had walked into her trap, Feng Wu was in fact running swiftly through the Rong Manor. Chapter 1303, Untitled. There weren't many guards in the Rong Manor, and at this late hour, the place looked deserted. However, that didn't mean that the courtyard wasn't well guarded. After all, it was the residence of Master Rong Yang. Feng Wu had a pretty good idea what she was facing as soon as she stepped into the manor. The Real Guard of the Rong Manor was a formation. The mist in the forest was only a common formation, but the one which guarded the manor was at a far more advanced level. As a master in refining, Master Rong Yang had a much better understanding of formations than most people in the Junwu Empire, but fortunately, Feng Wu had been studying formations since she was little, and her beautiful master was a truly peerless formation master. Hence, she was confident that she could crack the manor's lightning mist formation. Feng Wu calculated as she walked, and soon jumped over a wall and landed in the inner courtyard. She knew that Master Rong Yang would be in his refinery room. So, where is the refinery room? That would be the question Chaoga would ask if she was with Feng Wu. Feng Wu smiled. It was very easy to guess. This mountain was in fact a volcano, and had the purest abnormal flame beneath it. The refinery room had to be right above the mouth of the volcano, which also served as the core of the lightning mist formation. Hence, Feng Wu would be able to find the master when she deduced where the core of the formation was. Standing under an old tree, Feng Wu mumbled to herself and quickly did some calculations regarding the lightning mist formation. Just then she heard footsteps a short distance away. By the sound of it, it was the old steward and a stranger. The old steward asked, "Is the master still inside?" "The master hasn't come out since he went inside." The old steward asked, "Is the master studying the dragon scale gold the Zhuo family brought?" "That's right. The master hasn't let go of the dragon scale gold since he went inside. All he has talked about is making a formidable dagger." The old steward said, "Yuan, keep your eyes open, and don't let anyone in. If someone tries anything, you know what to do." Holding his sword between his crossed arms, Yuan said, "I'll kill them without hesitation." The old man was flustered and immediately waved his hands. "You don't have to go that far. If someone really tries to force their way in, knock them out and leave them to me." Yuan said, "Yes." The old steward strolled off after that, while Yuan jumped into a Chinese parasol tree a few steps away and sat down with his legs crossed and eyes closed. The old man walked past the pine tree that Feng Wu was hiding behind. They were only a meter apart. Not daring to take the old man lightly, Feng Wu moderated her heartbeat so that it was slow as possible. Just then, the old steward glanced in the direction of the pine tree. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. She couldn't afford to be spotted. This old man was quite a capable cultivator himself, and that guard known as Yuan was only a few steps away. There was no way that Feng Wu would be able to get away if the two men fought her together. The old steward stuck his head behind the pine tree. But by then, Feng Wu was already slowly circling around the tree away from the old man. Luckily, the moon was covered by clouds at that moment, which blocked all light. Otherwise, Feng Wu would have been betrayed by her shadow alone. That was so close. And she was so nervous. Taking a deep breath, Feng Wu forced her breathing to slow down and told herself to stay calm. While she was holding her breath, the old man gave up. Chapter 1304, Untitled. Crossing his hands behind his back, the old man shook his head and mumbled to himself, "I thought I sensed someone behind the tree. I guess I'm not as sharp as I used to be." Feng Wu only let out a breath of relief once the old steward walked away. She had been holding her breath for as long as 5 minutes, and was on the verge of passing out. Once the old man was gone, Yuan, the teenager sitting in the tree, was the only person Feng Wu had to worry about. Rubbing her chin, Feng Wu darted around. Roar dash. Just then, the tiger cub crawled out of Feng Wu's sleeve and gestured with its front paws that it would lure the teenager away. Feng Wu frowned. But he's really good. The cub was very stubborn and insisted that it could run very fast. Feng Wu recalled how fast the cub had run when they were in Proud Snowfield. It might have very short legs, but that didn't stop it from running very fast. What was more, after the amazing job Little Phoenix had done with refining the sand, the cub had to feel threatened. "Are you sure?" Feng Wu asked again. The cub waved its paw angrily, and the look on its face said, "Yes, I'm sure." "All right." Feng Wu rubbed its little head and said, "Remember to hide somewhere safe. I'll go get you when I come back out." The cub nodded. After that, Feng Wu picked up a stone and threw it in Yuan's direction. Thump. "Who's there?" Yuan cried out and immediately jumped out of the tree. The cub shook its little bottom at Yuan and smirked. A smirk. Yuan was shocked and irritated by the smirk on the cub's face. The cub threw another stone at the teenager. "How dare you, you little cub! Stop right there!" Yuan ran after it. Right at that moment, Feng Wu jumped into the inner courtyard like a flash of light. Yuan tried to catch the cub and almost succeeded at first. However, the cub moved so swiftly and ran up a tree. Feng Wu looked around the place after she jumped inside. All the rooms around the courtyard were refinery rooms, but there was only one major one. She would be in a lot of trouble if she walked into the wrong room and disturbed Master Rongyang. As Feng Wu walked in the dark, she quickly calculated the location of the formation core. Before long, she stopped in front of a well. A well? How could that be? Feng Wu went over her calculations again, and this well was still the result she obtained. She slowly breathed out. Master Rongyang was indeed a very wise man. No one else would have guessed that the real refinery room was in this well. So, the real trick lay in this ancient-looking well with rippling water inside. Feng Wu jumped in. As expected, instead of hitting the water, she landed on a protruding rock. There were 4 buttons next to the rock, and each was marked with a direction. Feng Wu's eyes flickered. She had to choose one button out of the 4. The right one would take her inside, and the wrong one would definitely set off some kind of alarm. This place was filled with traps. 1 out of 4. Feng Wu quickly analyzed the layout inside the well, then smiled. As expected, the buttons changed as the formation changed. Chapter 1305, Untitled. Master Rongyang seemed very confident in his own formation. However, there was always someone better. Feng Wu had been taught by Mu Jiuzhou himself, and Master Rongyang just wasn't her match. Based on the current time and the layout of the formation, Feng Wu was soon able to deduce the right button. When Feng Wu pressed the up button with her fair, slender finger with a small click, the wall inside the well opened to reveal a passageway that was wide enough for a person to walk through. Feng Wu's eyes lit up, and she quickly entered. She didn't have to walk very far. Roughly 100 meters later, she saw the end of the passageway. From there, Feng Wu walked into an open space. She was now in an open-air refinery site, and an orange flame burned in the center of the place. Wow! Seeing this, little Phoenix rolled around excitedly in the ring space. It yelled as it rolled around. Abnormal flame. That's an abnormal flame. As it turned out, the orange flame was also a type of abnormal flame, and the discovery made Feng Wu a little excited as well. However, she remained calm and kept surveying the area. A few steps away from the orange flame, an old man sat on the ground with his legs crossed, as though he was meditating. Feng Wu recalled something Feng Sun had said before. Master Rong Yang has an odd habit that very few people know about. He prays to be blessed by God every time he's about to forge a weapon, and it always lasts at least an hour. Feng Wu smiled a little. She then took a bottle of liquid out of her chest pocket and quietly moved toward the smelting table. The dragon scale gold sat right on the table and glowed a faint golden color. Feng Wu poured the liquid over the dragon scale gold, and the liquid evaporated as soon as it touched the metal. Just then, Feng Wu felt a frisson of alarm. When she looked over her shoulder, she saw that Master Rong Yang was waking up. Without hesitation, Feng Wu rushed back into the passageway. Master Rong Yang's eyes snapped open when Feng Wu dashed off, and they glowed with a blue light. He frowned a little, for he thought he had sensed an intruder. Getting to his feet, Master Rong Yang walked around the site, and even checked the button at the entrance of the passageway, but nothing seemed to have been tampered with. Was it my imagination? He smiled wryly when he saw the dragon scale gold. It was sitting right on the table. Had someone really been here, they would have stolen it already. Once his mind was settled, Master Rong Yang started forging the weapon. Meanwhile, Feng Wu narrowly escaped detection and jumped out of the well. However, before she could let out a breath of relief. "Who's there?" Yuan, who had been keeping guard in the tree, shouted and leapt in Feng Wu's direction. Just then the cub meowed a few steps away. Yuan paused and turned in the cub's direction in bewilderment. Feng Wu took the opportunity to flee. She moved as swift as a shooting star. Luckily, she knew formations very well and had learned the layout of the courtyard like the back of her hand. Anyone else would have been caught by now. Soon she returned to the woodshed. Whoosh! She pressed her back against the door after she entered, and let out a breath of relief. Chaoga was also relieved to see Feng Wu back. Chapter 1306, An Accident. Xiao Wu, you're back. Why did you run so fast? Is someone chasing you? Feng Wu smiled. It's okay. I've thrown off the person already. She rubbed the cub's head as she spoke. She didn't expect the little thing to be so clever. Not only did it mimic a cat, it also did a great job. So, did you get what you want? Seeing how happy Feng Wu was, Chaoga knew that she had probably succeeded. Feng Wu nodded. Don't worry, Zhuo Qingyu won't get what she wants. Chaoga had no idea what Feng Wu had done, but she trusted Feng Wu, like she always had. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Feng Wu was idle for the next few days and watched little Phoenix as it refined the sand. And on the 4th day, Chaoga felt that she couldn't wait anymore. Nudging Feng Wu with her elbow, she asked, "Didn't you say that it was going to be all right? Why isn't anything happening?" Feng Wu was equally confused. Based on her calculations, it should have happened by now, and she wondered what was going on. Despite her thoughts, Feng Wu didn't let them show. Instead, she smiled and said, "Just wait and see. If I'm right, it's going to happen soon." What's going to happen soon? The old steward showed up out of the blue, followed by Zhuo Qingyu. The old man had a serious look on his face while Zhuo Qingyu gloated. She walked around Feng Wu and grinned in satisfaction. "Feng Wu, why are you still here?" Feng Wu didn't reply, so Zhuo Qingyu went on, "Didn't I tell you already? Master Rong Yang is making a formidable dagger for my family, and there goes his quota for the year. If you knew any better, you should have left by now. There's just no point in staying here." Chowga flared up before Feng Wu could say anything. She glared at Zhuo Qingyu and said, "Shut up. No one wants to listen to you." "Oh my, isn't it Duan Chowga, Feng Wu's little minion?" Zhuo Qingyu pointed at Chowga with her whip. "Your master hasn't said anything yet. Why are you yelling at me?" Chowga was infuriated. On guard, Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. "Master." It was obvious that Zhuo Qingyu wanted to drive a wedge between Feng Wu and Chowga. However, Chowga wasn't the type to take the bait. "Zhuo Qingyu, go to hell." Chowga charged at her. Right at that moment, that giant man put himself in front of Zhuo Qingyu and glared at Chowga with eyes as big as lanterns. Feng Wu stopped Chowga. The stalwart man was known as Tu Ao and was much stronger than either of them. Fighting him wouldn't do them any good. However, Zhuo Qingyu wouldn't let it drop. "Feng Wu, why aren't you saying anything? Have you given up already?" "I see that Miss Zhuo doesn't have anything better to do." Feng Wu gave her a half smile. "If that's the case, why don't you pay more attention to your formidable weapon?" Feng Wu had been feeling a little guilty for destroying the precious dragon scale gold, but after she saw Zhuo Qingyu's attitude, all her guilt disappeared. "What about my dagger? Master Rong Yang's working on it." Zhuo Qingyu gloated. "If things go to plan, he'll be finished by the end of the day." "What? Are you jealous?" Chapter 1307. I know what to do. "I'm jealous?" Feng Wu smiled. "If I remember correctly, even Master Rong Yang can fail when he's forging a formidable weapon. Am I right?" Zhuo Qingyu sounded very confident when she said, "I wouldn't worry if I were you. Master Rong Yang is the most outstanding refiner, and with his efforts, the dragon scale dagger is going." Just then, boom. There was the sound of a loud explosion. They turned in unison, only to see heavy smoke rising up into the sky. Feng Wu was thrilled. This was what she had been waiting for, albeit it was happening later than she had expected. What was that? What happened? Where is it? If I'm not mistaken, isn't that where Master Rong Yang forges his weapons? Everyone was speaking in astonishment. The old steward had dashed off already, and Zhuo Qingyu immediately ran after him. "Let's go have a look." Grabbing Chowga by the arm, Feng Wu led her in that direction as well. The explosion was so loud that all hell had broken loose in the Rong Manor, as everyone rushed to the inner courtyard. Feng Wu arrived there to find dark smoke billowing and flames leaping out of the well. Cough, cough. Supported by his servants, Master Rong Yang scrambled out of the well. His hair was disheveled and partially scorched, and the fire had left holes in his clothes, which made him such a sorry sight. The old steward rushed over to steady Master Rong Yang. "Master, master." The master felt weak and was panting a little. He then pointed at the well. "My forging materials, quickly." The old steward wanted to go inside, but the smoke was simply too thick. Even just moving a little closer to the well brought tears to his eyes, let alone climbing down into it. Other people also tried, but as soon as they got close, the smoke and fire forced them back. Feng Wu had been down there before and knew that Master Rong Yang kept all his precious forging materials on the shelf on the right. Feng Wu found it such a waste of an opportunity if she didn't make good use of the situation. She took out a mask and handed it to the old steward. "Put this on. It'll keep the smoke out." It was the same kind of mask Feng Wu had given Chowga in the forest previously. The old steward wouldn't believe Feng Wu and glared at her. "You shouldn't be here. Go away. Someone take her." What if it works? Feng Wu smiled at the old steward. "Are you sure you don't even want to try?" The old steward was flustered. Feng Wu was still smiling. "Doesn't Master Rong Yang have a lot of precious materials down there?" She had seen them herself and knew that they were indeed very precious. "Just try it." By then, Master Rong Yang had finally returned to himself. He glanced at Feng Wu and told the old steward, "Give it a try." All the materials would be lost if they didn't try, but what if they succeeded? The old steward threw a dirty look at Feng Wu, but in the end, he still snatched the mask out of her hand and handed it to Yuan. Try it. Yuan quickly put the mask on. The mask covered his entire face, but the part over the eyes was transparent, and one could see through it. Without thinking, Yuan rushed into the fire. He ran back out a moment later, holding a basket. In it were none other than the materials. You saved them? Really? The old steward was so excited that he was in tears. Chapter 1308. What if? Yuan looked equally excited. Taking off the mask, he told the old steward, "This mask is great. With it, I don't have to worry about getting smoke in my eyes, and I can run around freely in the fire." The old steward couldn't help but glance at Feng Wu. He was surprised that the girl's mask had worked. Master Rong Yang glanced at Feng Wu as well and said, "I've never seen her here before." The old steward had no choice but to introduce Feng Wu to Master Rong Yang. "She's Feng Wu from the imperial capital, and she wants you to build a weapon for her." The mention of her request brought a frustrated look to Master Rong Yang's face. God! He heaved a long sigh. How am I supposed to forge anything when my work area has been destroyed? What if I can extinguish the fire for you? Feng Wu smiled at the master. The old steward glared at Feng Wu. Who gave you permission to speak? Shut up. Master Rong Yang waved him off. He shook his head and gave Feng Wu a wry smile. Kiddo, I can't even put out the fire now, let alone make any weapons. If this goes on, the magma may pour out of the opening. He sounded frustrated when he said, when that happens, all of Three Trees Valley will be burnt to the ground, to say nothing of this manor. At the mention of that, Master Rong Yang gave the old steward the instruction, take everyone down the mountain now. Was he going to give up on the Rong manor? Master! The old steward looked panicked. The fire from the magma was such a rare resource, which contributed greatly to Master Rong Yang's achievements. Just go, the master waved his hand and said grumpily. The old man was very open-minded and had made such a life-changing decision as easily as snapping his fingers. Feng Wu looked at the old man in admiration, but she felt guilty over what she had done as well. Master Rong Yang. Feng Wu stepped out again and looked earnestly at Master Rong Yang. What if I can put out the fire? Those words shocked everyone. Put out the fire? The old steward stared at Feng Wu so hard that his eyes popped out. Do you know how many cultivators who specialize in the water element we've sent into the well? Even they can't stop the fire. Zhuo Qingyu stepped out as well and stared coldly at Feng Wu. Miss Feng, if you can't give them any help, the least you can do is step aside and let them do their job. Other people wouldn't believe Feng Wu either, but she only smiled and turned to Master Rong Yang. If I don't try, the fire will spread to destroy the manor, the valley, and even the entire mountain. How can you be so sure that you can put out the fire? Zhuo Qingyu glared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu smiled. What if I succeed? Zhuo Qingyu said, Who? Master Rong Yang looked from Feng Wu to the basket. She had said the same thing a moment ago, and the basket of materials had been saved. While everyone else was still questioning Feng Wu, the master smiled at her. If you really want to try, go ahead. Be careful down there. Master Rong Yang had agreed. He actually believed that an ignorant girl like her could extinguish this great fire. Master! The old steward wanted to say something, but Master Rong Yang stopped him. Chapter 1309. Did Feng Wu die in the fire? Feng Wu said, Master Rong Yang, will you tell the cultivators with the water attribute to come back up, please? Why do you have so many impossible requests? The old steward glared at her. However, to his surprise, Master Rong Yang agreed. Everyone was speechless. Feng Wu cupped her hands at Master Rong Yang before jumping into the well. The water attribute cultivators were all frustrated, and Lin, their leader, yelled in exasperation, What's going on? The fire is out of control already. Why were we told to come back out? The other cultivators didn't agree with the decision either. The old steward glowered. Zhuqingyu said, because Miss Feng Wu said that she could extinguish the fire all by herself. Ha! Lin smirked. There are 15 of us here, but even after exerting all our strength, we couldn't stop the fire from spreading. How can an ignorant girl make such an arrogant claim? His fellow cultivators were unconvinced as well. The old steward also said anxiously, Master, I'll tell the others to go pack and leave the mountain. He had no confidence in Feng Wu at all. Master Rongyang didn't have much faith in Feng Wu either, so he smiled wryly and waved at his steward. Go ahead. Shortly after the old steward headed back to the house that someone cried out, Gosh! The smoke is getting thinner. The smoke! Everyone turned to look at the well. Dark smoke had been rising out of the well and billowing up into the sky earlier, but it was noticeably thinning out now. That's right. It really isn't as thick as before. Holy crap. It's true. Miss Feng really can put out the fire. Maybe she's telling the truth. The old steward, Zhuqingyu, and the cultivators were all astonished. How was that possible? However, they were forced to accept the truth. The old steward stared at Master Rongyang. Master, that's... Master Rongyang was equally astonished, but as an open-minded man, he only chuckled. That's indeed an interesting girl. The old steward was speechless. Master, should I still tell the others to leave? Asked the old man tentatively. Master Rongyang waved at him and said, Hang on. Maybe the girl actually could make a difference. Just then Zhuqingyu cried out, The smoke is getting thicker again. It's as black as ink now. Despite her exaggerated tone, Zhuqingyu was secretly relieved. She knew that if Feng Wu really could put out the fire, Master Rongyang would take her much more seriously, and that was the last thing Zhuqingyu wanted. Meanwhile, the others cried out in surprise as well. Not only did the smoke get thicker and darker, flames were leaping out of the well at the same time. Oh God! It's spreading! The old steward was so anxious that his eyes almost turned red. Master, we have to evacuate. Looking at the master, the old steward said anxiously, We have to leave. Otherwise, we may all die here. Zhuqingyu revered Master Rongyang's authority, but even she couldn't help but say, Master Rongyang, you can't trust Feng Wu. If I'm right, she's already died in the fire. Our top priority now is to evacuate the people here. As the saying goes, where there's life, there's hope. Chapter 13:10, Tie Her Up. Had Feng Wu died in the fire? Everyone's stomachs lurched when they heard those words. Was Zhuqingyu telling the truth? Was Feng Wu dead already? Of course not. At that moment, Feng Wu was actively putting out the fire. She had expected Master Rongyang to fail in the process of forging the dragon scale gold dagger because she had poured combustible liquid all over the metal beforehand. As for putting out the fire, Feng Wu had created the liquid herself. Needless to say, she had no problem putting out the fire. Moreover, abnormal flame. Abnormal flame. Thrilled, little Phoenix rolled around in the ring space. And it wasn't the only one. The tiger cub also had abnormal flame in its body, and longed for it as well. Hence, the two of them started working their way through the refinery room. Those cultivators with the water attribute weren't able to put out the abnormal flame, but the two animals couldn't stop sucking it into their stomachs. About 15 minutes later, all the flames in the refinery room had been absorbed by the two animals. They were so satiated that they fell asleep as soon as they climbed back into Feng Wu's ring space. To them, the fire was the greatest tonic. Their cultivation levels would improve significantly after they woke up. Feng Wu jumped out of the well after the smoke dissipated. Meanwhile, the people outside were still talking about Feng Wu. Zhuqingyu had actually managed to shed a few tears and was feigning sobs. Little Feng Wu was so pretty and so young. I can't believe that we lost her. What a pity. She then turned to Master Rongyang. Master, Feng Wu can have the dragon scale gold dagger that you made for my family. With such a formidable weapon with her, Her death will be worthwhile. The corner of Master Rong Yang's mouth twitched. He was a generous and open-minded man, but it didn't make him any less observant. He could see through Zhuo Qingyu perfectly. I wasn't able to make the dagger. Master Rong Yang stared at Zhuo Qingyu. Zhuo Qingyu cried out, "What? How is that possible? So, did all that dragon scale gold go to waste?" Master Rong Yang's voice was very cold when he said, "That wasn't real dragon scale gold. Your family gave me fake dragon scale gold, which is why my refinery room exploded. I need an explanation for this." Zhuo Qingyu was dazed when she heard those words. The dragon scale gold was fake? That's impossible. I don't believe it. The others stared at Zhuo Qingyu in surprise as well. Master Rong Yang held up a piece of dragon scale gold and smirked. "Here's the evidence. Are you saying that I'm lying?" He was devastated at the thought of his destroyed refinery room. "Master, my family would never have given you fake dragon scale gold, nor would we ever try to harm you." "Master?" Zhuo Qingyu tried to explain. But Master Rong Yang only snorted. "If you didn't mean to, then why did you show up here only after the fire broke out? If your family didn't have their own agenda, why did you urge me to start forging the weapon as soon as possible? If you didn't do this on purpose, then why did you pay me double to have me work faster?" Well, Zhuo Qingyu couldn't tell him that she had done all those things just to take up his time before Feng Wu got here. She was sure that if she hadn't done so, the master would have built a weapon for Feng Wu first. "Tie her up now?" Master Rong Yang was furious. "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."